Close your eyes and listen. Can you feel the ancient power, the solemn comfort carried on the wings of the Valkyries? It's the final embrace for heroes, a profound melody that paves the way to Valhalla. Join us as we unveil the true, often overlooked, beauty and meaning behind this mythical lullaby. Close your eyes and listen. Can you feel the ancient power, the solemn comfort carried on the wings of the Valkyries? Where a king spoke an oath to, Poseidon unleashes a curse that devours generations in the depths of Crete's unforgiving stone. Imagine the crash of waves against jagged cliffs, the tolling of temple bells in the salty wind, the clash of iron on iron as swords are forged in distant fires, and the whispered oaths that bind mortals to God's whims, sounds that pull you back to an age when heroes trembled at the edge of the unknown. You probably won't want to believe what you are about to hear, for this tale reveals not just a monster's roar, but the fragile threads of fate that weave every life into the labyrinth of destiny. So, before the tension gets too high, take a moment to like the episode and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. It's fascinating to see where these ancient mysteries echo today. Now, close your eyes. Imagine the ancient mountains, rising like silent sentinels under a star-pricked sky, and let's unravel this epic tale together. Close your eyes and listen. Can you feel the ancient power, the solemn comfort, carried on the wings of the Valkyries? This isn't just a song. It's the final embrace for heroes, a profound melody that paves the way to Valhalla. Join us as we unveil the true, often overlooked, beauty and meaning behind this mythical lullaby. You stand on the sun-scorched docks of Piraeus, the air thick with the tang of brine and sun-warmed timber, as the great trireme sways gently against its moorings. The year is one of those forgotten epochs in the annals of Greek history, when Athens still bowed to the whims of distant kings and the sea whispered secrets of tribute and terror to every sailor who dared its embrace. Your sandals sink into the damp wood worn smooth by countless feet fleeing or seeking glory, and you feel the weight of the oarsman's chants fading behind you, the rhythmic pull that carried you across the wind-dark Aegean, now replaced by the distant lowing of cattle on the hills of Attica. But it's not the journey's end that stirs your blood. It's the murmurs rippling through the crowd like wind through olive groves. The tribute sails for Knossos, they say, voices laced with dread. 14 souls to feed the beast in the maze. You, Theseus, Prince of Athens, have come not as tribute, but as the volunteer who would end this cycle of Shema, cycle born from your father, a sancient pact with the gods, a pact now twisted into yearly horror. As you push through the throng of merchants and mourners, the scent of olive oil and spiced wine clings to your tunic, mingling with the faint acrid smoke from sacrificial fires on the nearby altars. You pause at the edge of the harbor, gazing toward the horizon where Crete looms like a crouched predator, its peaks shrouded in myth. In the myths of old, this island was the cradle of Minoan splendor, civilization that flourished around 2000 BCE. Their palaces labyrinthine wonders of frescoed walls and hydraulic ingenuity, long before the Greeks claimed their stories. Yet even then, legends spoke of a deeper darkness, of bull-leaping youths who danced with death in ritual games that blurred sport and sacrifice. You wonder if those ancient Cretans knew the full price of their hubris. When King Minos, son of Zeus, dared to defy the sea god by withholding the white bull meant for the Altara, bull so radiant it was said to glow like moonlight on waves, a divine gift turned to curse. The ship's captain approaches, his face weathered like driftwood, eyes shadowed by the brim of his woolen cap. Prince Theseus, he rasps, his voice carrying the gravel of too many storms. The winds favor us, but the omens do not. Last night an eclipse shadowed the moon, and the priests read it as Poseidon's wrath stirring anew. You nod, feeling the chill of that celestial warning settle in your bones, even as the sun beats down mercilessly. The eclipse, a real portent in the skies of antiquity, often woven into tales of divine displeasure, minds you of the god's unyielding gaze. Poseidon, lord of the deep, had once flooded the lands in fury when his worship faltered. And here, in this broken oath, his vengeance took a more intimate form, a queen's unnatural passion, a monstrous birth, and a labyrinth designed to contain the unthinkable. You board the vessel, the deck creaking under your weight, and as the sails unfurl with a snap like cracking bone, you settle against the rail.
The sea stretches before you, vast and indifferent, its surface rippling with secrets. In your mind, fragments of the oracle-esque prophecy replate the one you sought in Delphi before departing where the Pythia, her voice a hiss through steam-veiled cracks in the earth, foretold. The thread of fate will guide or strangle. Hey, choose wisely or become the maze's eternal guest.
You grip the rail tighter, the salt trough wood biting into your palms, and let your thoughts drift to the heart of the legend. The Minotaur, born of Pasiphae's shame, a creature, half man, half bull. Confined by Daedalus' ingenious prisoner, maze so convoluted that even its builder nearly lost his way. But there is a quirk to that labyrinth, a bizarre detail passed in hushed tones among sailors. Its walls, said to be lined with a peculiar bronze that hummed like a distant lyre when touched a resonance that mimicked the bull-s. Restless bellows, disorienting intruders with echoes that seem to breathe. As the ship cuts through the swells, you hear the first faint roar in your imagination, not real, yet insistent, carried on the wind like a prophecy fulfilled. It starts low, a rumble from the earth's core, vibrating through the timbers beneath your feet. You close your eyes, and there it is, the labyrinth's echo, drawing you inexorably toward Crete's cursed shores. The crew falls silent, their oars dipping in unison, as if the sea itself holds its breath. You think of the young Athenians, who sailed this path before 7 maidens and 7 youths, chosen by lot, their final voyage, a dirge of lost futures. Will you join them in the monster's jaws, or unravel the gods' cruel design? The roar grows louder in your mind, a call that promises glory or oblivion. The journey stretches into the afternoon, the sun tracing its arc like a golden thread across the sky. You converse with your companions, fellow volunteers whose faces pale at tales of the beast's appetite, how it devours not just flesh, but the very hope of escape, its horns curved like scythes of judgment. One youth, a slender boy from the fields of Attica, whispers of a local legend from his village, a fisherman who once netted a bull's horn washed ashore after a storm, only to find his nets forever tangled thereafter, as if the relic carried the maze's curse into the waves. Smile faintly, but inside, doubt coils like smoke from an incense burner. The gods demand balance. Poseidon's bull was to be sacrificed, yet Minos' pride birthed this abomination. What price will you pay to right it? Night falls as Crete's silhouette sharpens on the horizon, the first stars pricking the velvet dark like omens etched in fate's ledger. You stand watch, the decks slick with spray, listening to the creak of ropes and the lap of water against the hull sounds that mimic the labyrinth's own deceptions. A sudden gust carries a deeper note, almost a bellow, and you strain your ears, heart pounding. Is it the wind, or the first true echo of the Minotaur's labyrinth calling you home? The ship veers toward the harbor of Knossos, torches flickering on the distant quay like watchful eyes. You feel the threshold approaching, the ordinary world slipping away as the island's ancient mysteries enfold you. But the question that remains is, when you step onto those shores, will the roar you hear be the monster's or the unraveling of your own courage? The trireme glides into the sheltered bay of Knossos under the cover of dawn's first blush, the oars lifting like weary wings as the hull scrapes against the pebbled shallows. You step off the gangplank onto the sun-baked shores, stones warm and unyielding beneath your feet, radiating the heat of a land that has baked under Helios' gaze for millennia. The air hums with the scent of wild thyme and sea salt, mingled with the faint earthy musk of olive presses working in the distance. But it's the whispers that greet you first. Soft, insistent murmurs from the gathered crowd of Cretans, their faces a mosaic of curiosity and veiled fear. They line the quay in tunics dyed the deep red of saffron and murex, eyes darting like schools of fish evading a shadow. Another Athenian tribute, one woman hisses to her companion, her voice carrying on the breeze. But this one walks with the stride of a hero, or a fool. You feel their stares like weights, each one probing for the monstrous secret that clings to this island like barnacles to a hull, the secret of the labyrinth. Born from Greek mythology's darkest corners, where deities like Poseidon twist mortal pride into eternal torment, you stride forward, your companions trailing in a somber cluster, their footsteps crunching on the gravel path that winds upward from the harbor toward the palace sprawl. The landscape unfolds before you, terraced hills dotted with cypress trees, their needles whispering in the wind like conspirators, and beyond, the massive silhouette of Nasus rising like a crown of stone and color. In the heart of Minoan Crete, this palace complex was a marvel of ancient engineering, sprawling over acres with intricate drainage systems and multi-story wings that housed thousands, a historical fact that underscores the ingenuity behind Daedalus' mythic design. Turning a royal residence into a prison of unparalleled cunning, you pause to adjust the strap of your leather satchel. Heavy with the few provisions allowed, dried figs, a water skin, and the concealed hilt of your sword, smuggled against Minos' decrees. The sun climbs higher, casting long shadows that dance like omens across the path, and you catch a glimpse of the sacred river Lethe in the valley below, its waters murmuring promises of forgetfulness, a motif in these ancient mysteries where crossings demand sacrifices of memory. As you ascend, the whispers grow bolder, weaving through the crowd like threads in a loom. A grizzled fisherman, his hands scarred from nets and hooks, steps close and mutters, "Stranger from Athens, beware the bull's echo in the night it calls to those who seek to steal its peace." His words chill you, evoking the Norse legends of beasts bound by godly curses, much like the Minotaur's plight, where heroes face not just claws, but the psychological weight of divine retribution. You nod curtly, pressing on, but his warning lingers. Joining the cacophony of sounds, the bleat of goats on distant slopes, the rhythmic thud of looms from nearby workshops, the faint toll of a bronze bell from the palace gates, signaling the arrival of tribute, your mind races back to the voyage's end, when that imagined roar solidified into a palpable dread, as if the labyrinth itself sensed your approach and stirred in anticipation. The path levels out near the outskirts of the city, where mud brick homes cluster like beehives, their walls painted with frescoes of leaping dolphins and blooming lily images that speak of a culture thriving on the sea's bounty and the earth's fertility. Yet beneath this vibrancy lies the taboo of the bull, sacred to Poseidon yet profaned by Minos' refusal to sacrifice the gleaming creature sent from the depths. You overhear a group of children chanting a fragment of an old hymn as they play, "Bull of the wave, horn of the grave, what price for the oath you crave?" The words passed down through generations carry the weight of oral tradition, a proverb etched into the collective soul of Crete. You smile faintly at their innocence, but inside, tension coils tighter. These are the ordinary folk who live in the shadow of the palace's secret, their lives punctuated by the annual ships that never return full. Nearing the grand entrance, you encounter the first true guardian of thresholds. Not a man, but a statue of horned Dionysus, the god of wine and wild revels, his marble form weathered by sea wind's eyes, carved with an uncanny gleam that seems to follow your passage. In Greek mythology, Dionysus often lurked at the edges of such tales, his ecstatic rites. A counterpoint to the labyrinth's cold logic, but here a bizarre detail marks this effigy, its base inscribed with a rule and faded linear, a script forbidding any hero to speak the Minotaur's true name upon entering Knossos, lest the beast's rage summon earthquakes from the earth, a spellia quirky taboo said to stem from the creature. As anomalous function as both prisoner and oracle, its roars interpreting the god's will in guttural prophecy. You trace the inscription with your fingers, feeling the cool stone pulse faintly, almost like a heartbeat, and wonder if this is the first test. Silence as the price for entry. The gates swing open with a groan of oiled hinges, revealing the palace's inner courtyard, a vast expanse of polished limestone underfoot, surrounded by colonnades painted in vivid blues and reds. Guards in plumed helmets usher you forward, their spears glinting like Poseidon's trident, directing the group toward the holding chambers where tributes await their fate. You scan the faces around you, pale youths clutching amulets. Maidens with eyes downcast feel a surge of resolve, the hero's fire kindling against the chill of uncertainty. Whispers follow you still. Now from servants darting between pillars, tales of past challengers who vanished into the maze, their screams echoing for days, fueling the island's ancient mysteries. One servant, a wiry boy no older than 15, slips you a sprig of myrtle as you pass, his voice a bare breath, for luck against the stars' alignment. Tonight's omen favors the bold, but breaks the rash. You enter the dimmer halls. The air cooler now, laced with the aroma of cedar incense burning in wall niches. its smoke curling like serpents toward the high ceilings. The walls here bear murals of mythic processions, deities, in flowing robes. Heroes wrestling sea beasts, reminders that in this world, every step treads the line between mortal striving and divine caprice. Your companions murmur prayers to Athena for wisdom, but you focus on the path ahead. The labyrinth's pull growing stronger, a subtle vibration in the stone that mimics the ship's earlier creaks. A star omen flickers in your memory, the eclipse from the night before, when constellations shifted like fate weavers at their looms. Portending trials where sacred bargains would demand blood price or cursed relics as toll. As the guards separate you for inspection, you catch a glimpse of the palace's upper terraces, where silk banners flap in the breeze. And a figure watches from afar, a woman with flowing dark hair, her gaze piercing the distance. Could she be part of this web, or merely another shadow in the tale? The whispers crescendo into a low hum, enveloping you as you're led deeper, the monstrous secret pressing closer with every heartbeat. But the question that lingers is, in this palace of illusions, who truly holds the thread to guide you through the gathering storm? The guards herd you through a series of arched doorways, each one narrower than the last. The air growing heavier with the mingled scents of myrrh incense and the faint metallic temps of bronze fittings, polished by endless hands. You emerge into the crowded court of Knossos, a vast open square ringed by towering pillars that support a roof of cedar beams. Their surfaces alive with frescoes of lithe figures dancing in eternal spring. The space buzzes with the low hum of voices, courtiers, in embroidered robes, bartering whispers, musicians plucking lyres with strings that twang like distant heartbeats, and the occasional clink of goblets filled with honeyed wine passed among the elite. Sunlight filters through high vents, casting golden shafts that illuminate swirling motes of dust, turning the court into a stage where Greek mythology's dramas play out in the flesh, heroes and deities alike, reduced to the sweat and intrigue of mortal games. You stand at the edge of this throng, your Athenian tunic marking you as an outsider, while your companions huddle close, their breaths quickening in the press of bodies. As you scan the assembly for signs of the king, your eyes lock across the crowded court with Hirza, young woman perched on a low dais amid the royal kin. Her form draped in a flowing gown of crimson linen that catches the light like spilled wine. Ariadne, daughter of Minos, though you do not yet know her name. Her gaze pierces the chaos, steady and unblinking, as if she's been awaiting your arrival since the stars first aligned in ominous portent. You feel it immediately, that weight of forbidden knowledge in her silent plea, a subtle tilt of her head that conveys volumes, without a word, the labyrinth's secrets, the monster's torment, and perhaps a thread of salvation woven into the fabric of her sorrow. Her dark hair cascades in waves bound by a fillet of gold, and in her hands she cradles a small loom shuttle. Its ivory form carved with labyrinthian patterns that seem to shift under your stare. The court noise fades to a dull roar in your ears, the musicians' melodies twisting into something more insistent, like the river currents of Styx urging a crossing you cannot yet refuse. You take a step forward, drawn by that gaze weaving through clusters of nobles who part like mist before a prow. Whispers trail you now, not just from the crowd, but from the very stones. The Athenian prince, they murmur, come to challenge the bull's ancient mysteries. In the heart of Minoan Crete, this court once hosted grand bull-leaping festivals, a local legend rooted in historical rites where youths vaulted over sacred animals to honor the gods, a practice that blurred the line between athletic prowess and divine communion, echoing the perilous dances of heroes in these timeless tales. You imagine those long-ago spectacles, the dust-choked air filled with cheers and the thunder of hooves, a prelude to the curse that now demands human tribute. Ariadne's eyes never leave yours, and in that connection, you sense the psychological intrigue of deities' games. Where mortals like her bear the brunt of Poseidon's lingering wrath, her father's oath broken like a vessel shattered on rocky shores. The shuttle in her hands catches your attention fully now. A mythic artifact with a quirky, bizarre detail whispered among the palace lore. It hums faintly when held by those of royal blood, a vibration said to align with the Minotaur's heartbeat, allowing the bearer to sense the beastess moods like an oracle reading tea leaves in blood, a taboo tool. For using it invites the labyrinth's echoes into one's dreams, trading rest for visions of horned shadows. She turns it absently, and you swear you hear that hum, low and resonant, cutting through the court's din like a secret shared between fates. Your pulse quickens, matching its rhythm, and you wonder if this is the first sacred bargain offered in disguise, a boon from a princess trapped in her own web of loyalty and dread. The crowd surges around you, a servant offering a cup of cool water scented with mint, but you wave it away, focused on her. She sees the threads others miss. A voice confides nearby, a courtier leaning close, his breath warm with wine, daughter of the Oathkeeper, weaver of what might have been. You draw nearer, the court's energy shifting like tides under an eclipse, star omens from the previous night replaying in your mind as if the heavens themselves conspire. Ariadne rises slightly, her attendants fluttering like moths around a flame. But she silences them with a gesture, her plea now etched in the faint furrow of her brow. In this moment of connection, a first-person confession slips from the depths of the tale, as if I, the storyteller, lean in to share a pilgrim's aside. I've wandered these myths myself, felt that gaze pull like an undertow, reminding us that even in grandiosity, the human heart beats the loudest drum. You nod imperceptibly to her, acknowledging the forbidden knowledge she bears. The Minotaur, not just a beast but a living curse, its roars carrying the weight of unsaid prophecies, much like the tricksters in Norse legends who unravel fates with a grin and a riddle. The air thickens with the scent of blooming saffron from wall gardens, its petals unfurling like secrets in the heat. While distant temple bells toll the hour of judgment, iron on iron, clanging a somber rhythm. You halt just beyond the dais, the crowd forming a loose circle, their curiosity a palpable tension. Ariadne's lips part as if to speak, but she hesitates, glancing toward the shadowed arches where guards stand vigilant, their spears crossed like threshold guardians enforcing the king's decree. A cursed relic glints on her wrist, a bracelet of obsidian beads, said to ward off the labyrinth's pull, yet you sense its cost. Memories traded for glimpses of the future, a price etched in the lines of her face. The stars shifted last night, you venture softly, testing the waters, and her eyes widen, confirming the omen's role in this unfolding drama. The court falls into a hush, the lyres falling silent, leaving only the whisper of wind through cedar branches and the subtle hum from her shuttle. She extends her hand slightly, the gesture laden with implication, palm upturned as if offering a fragment of fate itself, a hymnal line surfacing in your thoughts. When threads cross the river of night, heroes find their light or lose it. The weight of her silent plea presses on you now, a psychological tension building like storm clouds over the Aegean, hinting at alliances forged in the shadow of taboos. You feel the palace's sonic textures enveloping you, the damp patter of a hidden fountain mimicking distant rain, the creak of leather from shifting armor, and beneath it all, that insistent hum, drawing you deeper into the ancient mysteries of deities and their capricious boons. Is this the oracle's warning manifesting in flesh, or the first trial where choice demands an oath's blood price? The moment stretches, taut as a bowstring, her gaze holding yours with an intensity that blurs the line between plea and prophecy. You sense the labyrinth's distant stir, a faint tremor in the flagstones, as if the beast senses this convergence. The crowd leans in, breath held, while incense smoke curls upward like ascending prayers. But the question that remains is, will you answer her silent call and step into the web she weaves? Or turn away before the forbidden knowledge claims its first toll on your soul? The hush in the court deepens as attendants in flowing kilts and breastplates of hammered bronze materialize from the shadowed colonnades. Their movements precise and unyielding, like the inexorable march of fate itself. You feel a firm hand on your shoulder, guiding you away from Ariadne's dais, her gaze lingering like a star omen etched into the twilight of your resolve. The crowd parts reluctantly, murmurs swelling into a tide of speculation. The king summons the Athenian as you re-led through a labyrinth of corridors that twist like the veins of the palace walls adorned with murals of sea voyages and divine bulls charging through waves. The air cools here, carrying the damp chill of underground springs, and the faint echo of dripping water mimics a river crossing, a leitmotif in these Greek mythology tales where every passage demands a toll of the soul. Your companions are separated, vanishing into side chambers. leaving you alone with the guards' measured footfalls. The clink of their belts a somber rhythm that underscores the weight of what's to come. You emerge into the throne room, a cavernous hall where light shafts from alabaster windows pierce the gloom, illuminating a dais of dark cypress wood inlaid with ivory-horned symbols of Poseidon's dominion, now twisted into emblems of Minos' pride. The king sits enthroned at its apex, his form imposing even in repose, clad in a robe of purple-dyed wool that drapes like the folds of a thunderhead, his beard streaked with silver and eyes sharp as obsidian blades. Minos, the oath-keeper of legend, whose name echoes through ancient mysteries as the ruler who once commanded a thalassocracy, a Cretan sea empire that dominated the Aegean around 1600 BCE, a historical fact that lent his decrees the unforce of unyielding law across the waves. You approach the foot of the dais, the flagstones cool and slick under your sandals, and drop to one knee as protocol demands. Feeling the chill of his command radiate like frost from a winter altar even before he speaks. "Rise, Theseus of Athens," Minos intones, his voice a deep rumble that fills the hall, resonating off the walls like the toll of a temple gong, each word laced with the authority of one who bargains with deities. You stand, meeting his gaze, and sense the psychological tension coiling in the air, the impossible oaths that bind heroes to their dooms. A recurring motif where sacred bargains exact blood prices far beyond flesh. His fingers drum on the arm of his throne, a throne quirkily bizarre in its design. Carved from a single massive cedar trunk said to whisper secrets of the underworld when the king sits idle. An anomalous function attributed to Daedalus craftsmanship, where the wood's grain holds trapped echoes of the dead revealing. Taboos to the ruler alone, but driving lesser men to madness if they linger too long. You'll hear it faintly now. A Cicerus-like wind through reeds, carrying fragments of old proverbs. Oaths live in the cut. Break them, and the blade turns inward. Minos leans forward, his eyes narrowing, and the whispering fades, as if silenced by his will. "You come as tribute, yet I see the fire of challenge in your stance," he continues, his tone measured, building suspense with the cadence of an oracle unveiling prophecy. "The gods of Greek mythology demand balance for my father's Zeus gifts and Poseidon's bull. That white harbinger from the foam was denied its rightful pyre. From that broken vow springs the labyrinth's guardian, a curse you Athenians feed with your youths each cycle. You feel the chill deepen, seeping into your bones like the damp cedar scent rising from the throne, mingling with the faint smoke of incense braziers that flicker at the hall's edges. The king's decree unfolds slowly, deliberately, as he gestures to a nearby scribe who unrolls a parchment etched with wax seals. The script invoking eclipses and star omens as witnesses to the pact. By the laws of Crete, no entrant to the maze may carry arms of iron or bronze, only wit and will shall suffice. Emerge victorious, and Athens' tribute ends. Fail, and your city bows deeper still. The words hang heavy, binding you to this impossible oath, a threshold guardian's trial wrapped in royal edict. You clench your fists at your sides, the concealed sword's hilt pressing against your thigh like a forbidden relic. Its presence a taboo that could unravel everything. Minos' temperament reveals itself in this moment, a quirky detail from palace lore. He never speaks without invoking the CS moods. His decrees shifting like tides, calm one instant and storm-lash the next, a rule born from his divine lineage that makes every command feel like a wave about to crash. Now the calm prevails, but you sense the undercurrent. The psychological intrigue of a king who weighs heroes against the god scales. Knowing the Minotaur's roars carry the cost of his own hubris. "Swear it here, before these walls that have heard 1,000 vows," he commands, extending a chalice of dark wine mixed with sacrificial blood. Its surface rippling like the Styx. You hesitate, the liquid's metallic temps sharp in the air. And a first-person confessional stirs within the narrative, as if I, the ancient teller, pause to reflect. In weaving these Norse legends of binding oaths, I've learned that the true labyrinth lies not in stone, but in the heart's unyielding paths. You take the chalice, the cool metal grounding you, to intone the oath. By Poseidon and the stars above, I entered the maze, unarmed. To face the beast and free the bound. The words seal like wax on a scroll, the hall's sonic textures amplifying the moment, the drip of water from a hidden aqueduct, the soft crackle of incense, and the throne's whisper. resuming now, murmuring of traded memories and cursed relics that await within. Minos nods, satisfaction etching his features, but his eyes hold a shadow of doubt, as if he foresees the unraveling of his own design. Servants enter then, bearing robes of white linen for the tribute symbols of purity before the divine trial. Daniers reluctantly the fabric light, yet confining a reminder of the costs. Scars not of body but of choices that echo eternally. As the audience concludes, Minos rises, his shadow stretching long across the dais like an eclipse blotting the sun, and dismisses you with a wave that stirs the air into a faint breeze carrying salt from distant shores. You back away, bowing the decrees, chill lingering like frost on your skin, binding you to the labyrinth's devouring hunger. The corridors swallow you once more, leading toward the holding chambers where your companions await, their faces pale in the torchlight. Whispers from the walls seem to follow, fragments of hymnal lines. When stars shift, grief shifts with them, a proverb that ties back to the night's omen, propelling the story forward. You touch the myrtle sprig from earlier, its leaves crisp and aromatic, a small anchor against the rising tide of dread. Ariadne's gaze from the court flickers in your memory, a silent promise amid the king's unyielding command. The path to the chambers winds downward, the air growing damper, laced with the earthy scent of underground rivers. You hear the first true echoes not imagined, but real faint scrapes and low bellows rising from the depths, as if the Minotaur senses the oath's fresh ink. Guards flank you now, their presence a constant reminder of the threshold crossed, the ordinary world left behind in the harbor's sun. But the question that remains is, with this decree chaining your hands and fate, what hidden thread will you grasp to turn the god's curse into a hero's dawn? The holding chambers lie deep within the palace's underbelly, a series of vaulted rooms hewn from limestone that gleams faintly in the torchlight. Their walls etched with faded inscriptions of Minoan script that curl like vines seeking the sun. You enter the largest one, the heavy door thudding shut behind you with a finality that echoes through the space, sealing out the court-esque distant hum and plunging you into a world of hushed breaths and flickering shadows. Your companions mill about on woven reed mats, some pacing the perimeter, others slumped against the cool stone, their white robes pooling like spilled milk on the floor. The air down here carries the damp kiss of subterranean streams, constant trickle audible from cracks in the masonry, evoking the motif of river crossings where souls must ford unseen barriers to reach the trials beyond. You find a corner alcove away from the others, murmured prayers, and there in the privacy of dancing flames from a single oil lamp. You grip your sword, the one smuggled past the guards its hilt, wrapped in worn leather, that still holds the warmth of your palm. The blade slides free with a whisper of steel on scabbard, catching the light in a gleam that cuts through the gloom like a star-omen piercing night. You run your thumb along the edge, not to test its sharpness, but to ground yourself in its unyielding truth, the metal cool and reassuring against your skin. Forging the hero's resolve begins here in this shadowed vigil. As you steel your mind against the labyrinth's dual promise, madness that unravels the boldest thoughts, and glory that crowns the survivors with legends etched in eternity. In Greek mythology, such moments often precede the divine encounters, where heroes like Heracles or Jason pause to commune with their inner fire. Drawing strength from the gods' capricious gifts, you close your eyes, breathing deeply, the scent of olive oil from the lamp mingling with the faint, musty aroma of the stone, and let the weight of Minos' decree settle like a mantle. No arms allowed, yet here it is, a defiance born of necessity, its presence a sacred bargain with fate itself consequential. For discovery could twist your quest into outright rebellion against the deity's will. Your mind drifts to the palace's upper halls, to Ariadne's piercing gaze and the hum of her shuttle. A thread of hope amid the king's chill command. The echoes from the depths grow clearer now, not just scrapes, but rhythmic thuds, like hooves testing the earth, stirring the psychological tension that coils in your chest. You visualize the labyrinth as the tales describe it, corridors of deceptive symmetry, walls that shift under moonlight, designed by Daedalus to trap not just the body, but the spirit in endless loops of doubt. A local legend from Cretan shores surfaces in your thoughts, one rooted in the island's ancient bull cults rituals, where initiates fasted in cave sanctuaries, merging with visions that guided their lives, a historical practice that blurred shamanism and state religion, much like the ordeals awaiting you. You wonder if those visionaries heard the same bellows, interpreting them as calls from the underworld guide, a figure who ferries souls through mazes of choice and cost. The sword feels heavier in your grasp. A relic of Athens forges its pommel engraved with an owl for Athena. Goddess of wisdom and war, her favor a boon you invoke, silently whispering a fragment of him. Threads of the wise weave through the dark. Folly frays them into naught. But there's a quirky, bizarre detail to this artifact passed in sailor, yarns across the Aegean. When drawn in the shadow of a labyrinth, it sings a faint high note like a distant flute, an anomalous function said to align with the maze's resonances, either harmonizing for safe passage or clashing to summon guardians, a taboo rule, for the sound demands an oath of silence afterward, lest it attract cursed relics that drain the wielder's memories like wine from a cracked amphora. You test it now, angling the blade toward the torch. And there it is, a soft, ethereal tone that vibrates through your fingers, sending a shiver up your arm. The other tributes glance over, eyes wide, but you sheath it swiftly, the note fading into the trickle of water, leaving you fortified, yet wary. You rise then, pacing the chamber's length, your footsteps muffled on the mats, each step a deliberate forging of will. The companions gather closer. Drawn by your quiet intensity, one maiden with trembling hands asks of the stars' alignment from the eclipse. And you recount the oracle's words from Delphi, weaving them into encouragement. The thread will guide or strangle. We choose. A young man, broad-shouldered from farm labors, shares a proverb from his village: heroes grip not the hilt alone, but the heart's unbreaking steel. His words resonate, building the epic cadence of shared resolve as the sonic textures of the chamber envelop you, the drip-drip of moisture, the soft rustle of robes, and now intruding from the walls, the labyrinth's first true whispers like wind sighing through cedar groves above. You feel the threshold guardian's presence in these sounds, testing your mettle before the true descent. A first-person confessional emerges softly, as if I, the audio storyteller, draw breath amid the tale. In narrating these Norse legends of inner trials, where gods like Odin sacrificed eyes for wisdom, I've found that the mind's forge burns hottest in solitude, tempering fear into the blade that cuts fate's knots. Go. You nod to yourself, absorbing the insight, and turn to your group, outlining a plan in hushed tones not of escape, but of endurance, emphasizing the costs, traded memories for clues, scars from boons that heal only to bind anew. The air thickens with anticipation. Incense from a small altar in the corner burned, myrtle leaves releasing curls of smoke that dance like fate weavers at their looms, carrying scents of earth and sea. You grip the sword's hilt, once more concealed now in the folds of your robe, and visualize the confrontation. The Minotaur's rage is a mirror to your own. Its horns a crown of divine judgment, the maze a living entity that devours the weak-hearted. As night deepens, the chamber's single lamp gutters low, shadows lengthening like fingers reaching for the door. You sit cross-legged, eyes on the flame, letting the echoes lull you into a meditative trance, where glory and madness blur at the edges. The promise of the labyrinth pulls at you, a siren call of ancient mysteries. Heroes forged in the crucible of deities' whims. One companion dozes fitfully, murmuring of eclipses and blood prices, while you remain vigilant, resolve hardening like bronze in the fire. The whispers from the depths crescendo briefly, a low roar that vibrates the floor, then subside, leaving silence pregnant with portent. You touch the myrtle sprig again, its leaves now wilted slightly, a reminder of fragile anchors in the storm. The hours stretch, the trickle of water marking time like an hourglass of fate, and you emerge from your vigil transformed, the hero's fire kindled against the encroaching dark. The sword sheathed in secret becomes an extension of your will, a counter to the king's decree. But the question that remains is, when the bronze doors yawn open at dawn, will this forged resolve shatter under the maze's first illusion, or carve a path through its devouring heart? Dawn's pale light seeps through narrow slits in the chamber walls, turning the air a hazy gold as the heavy door creaks open, admitting a procession of hooded figures bearing trays of ritual bread and bitter herbs. You rise from your vigil, the sword's concealed weight a steady pulse against your side. Resolve tempered like iron in the night's forge. The tributes stir, rubbing sleep from their eyes, and form a line, under the guards' watchful spears. The group shuffling out into corridors that slope downward, each step echoing the labyrinth's insidious pull. The air grows cooler, laced with the sharp tang of unburnt sage. And you sense the palace transitioning from sanctuary to sepulchre, the ordinary comforts left behind in the harbor's distant memory. Whispers from the walls intensify, not mere echoes now, patterned sighs that mimic human speech. As if the stone itself anticipates the descent, braiding dread into the fabric of your quest like threads in Ariadne's loom. The procession halts in an antechamber adjacent to the labyrinth's entrance, circular room ringed by alcoves where braziers flicker with low flames, casting elongated shadows that dance like fate weavers at twilight. Here the oracle awaits, summoned by ancient custom for the tribute's final rite as seer from the sacred groves of Ida, presence of threshold guardian, bridging mortal fears and divine whispers. You lean close to her veiled face as she beckons you forward, the group parting to allow this intimate communion. Her form shrouded in gossamer layers dyed the indigo of midnight seas, adorned with amulets of polished shell that clink softly with each breath. The scent of hearth and wild thyme envelops you, grounding yet unsettling, as if she's drawn from the island's very roots. In Cretan mythology, oracles like her drew from the earth's vapors, much like the Pythia at Delphi, where fumes from chthonic fissures induced trances. A historical practice that lent these seers their uncanny insight, turning local legends into vessels for the gods. Unfiltered truths? Her veil parts slightly, revealing eyes milky as river fog, and she grasps your wrist with fingers cool and unyielding, pulling you nearer until her breath warms your ear, carrying the faint chime of distant temple bells. "Theseus, son of Aegeus," she murmurs, her voice a weave of silken stone, threading dread through your veins like a river crossing into shadowed realms. The labyrinth hungers not for flesh alone, but for the unraveling of oaths. Remember Minos' broken vow to Poseidon. The white bull's gleam denied the altar's fire. You nod. The chill of the king's decree resurfacing, its impossible binding now amplified by her words. Building suspense with the methodical cadence of prophecy unveiled, the other tributes watch in silence, their faces, pale masks in the firelight, while the sonic textures of the room deepen, the crackle of embers, the drip of condensation from the ceiling, and beneath it the labyrinth's low rumble, a primal underscore to her revelations. She continues, her tone calm, yet laced with epic gravity, painting visions that grip your mind's eye. You will descend into corridors where walls weep with the blood price of past heroes. Their shades, trapped by taboos unspoken, cross no unmarked threshold without offering silence as toll. The Minotaur's roar summon eclipses that blot your path. A star omen from the previous night flickers in her description, stars shifting like grief in the proverb she intones. When stars shift, grief shifts with them, a hymnal fragment etched into Cretan lore, seeding the tale with motifs of celestial judgment. You feel the psychological tension mount, her words coiling around your resolve like the sword's hidden song, hinting at trials where tricksters and underworld guides await, each boon carrying costs of scars or traded memories. The seer's hand tightens, nails like obsidian points, and she leans closer still, her veil brushing your cheek, whispering of sacred bargains gone awry. The beast guard's a relic, cursed by the Oathkeeper, an artifact of horn and bronze that hums with anomalous power. Touch it, and it demands your name's echo, binding your voice to the maze forever. A bizarre rule, where the wielder's shouts become the labyrinth's deceptive calls, luring allies to doom. The quirky detail of that relic, a horned crown said to be the Minotaur's birthright. Forged by Hephaestus in a fit of godly whimsy surfaces in her tail, its function a taboo that twists sound into illusion. Much like the deceptive echoes in Norse legends, where Loki's lies reshape reality. You shiver, the antechamber's damp air clinging to your skin like sweat from cold stone. And a first-person confessional slips into the narrative, as if I, the storyteller of these ancient mysteries, share a pilgrim's pause, in voicing the oracles of old, where deities spoke through veiled lips. I've felt the weave of dread tighten, reminding us that warnings are double-edged, cutting path and peril alike. Her milky eyes bore into yours, unseeing, yet all-knowing, and she releases your wrist, pressing a small vial of oil into your A nod to the sprig from the servant boy at its glass, warm as if holding captured sunlight. Anoint the thread you seek, she advises, for without it the maze devours the hero's light. The procession stirs as she turns to the next tribute, her whispers resuming in a private litany, but her warning lingers in your ears, weaving psychological intrigue with the grandiosity of God's designs. You pocket the vial, its contents sloshing softly, a fragile counter to the labyrinth's devouring hunger, and glance toward the massive bronze doors ahead, etched with labyrinthian spirals that seem to writhe in the firelight. The group murmurs now, sharing fragments of her prophecies, voices overlapping like waves on the Lethe, while incense from the braziers curls upward, carrying scents of cedar and salt that evoke the sea's eternal murmur. You touch the concealed sword, its hilt to anchor against the dread, recalling Ariadne's silent plea from the cord, a possible thread in this web of fate. The echoes from beyond the doors grow insistent, a bellow muffled by stone, as if the beast senses the oracle's intrusion into its domain. Guards approach, keys jangling like oathkeepers' chains, preparing to unbar the entrance, and you step back into line, the seer's words pulsing in your mind like a heartbeat shared with the depths. The antechamber's flames gutter slightly, shadows lengthening as dawn's light fades into the underground pall, amplifying the sensory creep, the chill sweat on your brow, the faint ring of iron under breath from the door's hinges. Heroes in these tales often face such omens, or choices escalating trials where underworld guides demand consequential prices, silence for passage, memories for maps. You straighten, resolve flickering amid the tension, the vial's warmth a small miracle against the cold logic of the maze. As the doors begin to groan open, revealing a yawning blackness laced with the scent of damp earth and forgotten blood, the oracle's final whisper reaches you on the wind. The river of choice awaits. Ford it wisely, or become its eternal current. The group tenses, breaths held, the sonic tapestry swelling with the creak of metal and the distant roar that answers her fading voice. But the question that remains is, with this dread woven into your quest's very threads, will the seer's warnings illuminate the path ahead, or merely heighten the shadows closing in? The bronze doors swing inward with a resonant groan, exhaling a breath of musty depths that sweeps over the group like the sigh of an awakening giant carrying hints of moldering straw and the metallic undercurrent of ancient blood long dried. You step forward first, the antechamber's torchlight yielding to the labyrinth's enveloping dark, your white robe whispering against the uneven threshold as you cross into its maw. The other tributes follow in a tight cluster, their footsteps faltering on the slick stone floor, the air immediately thickening with the weight of confinement, as if the maze itself inhales, drawing you deeper into its devouring hunger. Echoes multiply here, each sound rebounding off invisible walls, the drip of unseen water, the shuffle of sandals, and now intruding from the gloom, a low vibration like distant thunder rolling through cedar roots. You pause just beyond the entrance, letting your eyes adjust to the faint phosphorescence on the wall's veins of mineral that glow softly illuminating the first fork. 2 corridors branching left and right, their arches carved with motifs of coiled serpents, guardians of these Greek mythology thresholds where choices forge or fracture fates. Before the doors seal with a finality that echoes like a tomb's lid. A shadow detaches from the antechamber's edge, Ariadne, slipping through the guard's lax vigil, her crimson gown a fleeting splash of color in the dimness. She moves with purpose, her face set in determination, the shuttle from the court clutched in one hand like a talisman. You turn, surprise mingling with the relief that floods your chest, her presence a counterpoint to the oracle's dread warnings, a human thread amid the divine caprice. "Theseus," she breathes, voice barely above the maze's hum. Stepping close enough that you catch the subtle scent of saffron and myrrh clinging to her skin, reminder of the palace's vibrant life now left behind. Her eyes, still holding that weight of forbidden knowledge from the crowded court, scan the group briefly before fixing on you, conveying urgency without alarm. The guards outside shift uneasily, but she waves a signet ring royal authority that holds them at bay, buying these precious moments before the labyrinth claims its solitude. She extends her free hand, palm upturned, revealing the gift, a silken line, spool upon spool of fine thread dyed the deep blue of midnight seas, shimmering faintly as if woven from starlight itself. "Hey, take this," she urges, pressing it into your grasp, the material cool and impossibly smooth against your fingers, humming with a subtle energy that resonates through your bones like the sword's hidden song. You accept Ariadne's gift, feeling its power immediately, the thread of fate unspooling in your palm. A lifeline designed to defy the maze's devouring hunger, allowing you to retrace steps amid the twists that ensnare the unwary. In the myths of Minotaur and Crete, such threads echoed local legends of Theseus's own tale, where Ariadne's aid stemmed from her role as a fate weaver, drawing from historical rituals where priestesses hung cords during initiations to symbolize paths through life's labyrinths, a practice that blended the sacred and the survivalist in ancient ceremonies. You coil it carefully around your wrist, the hum growing steadier, a rhythmic pulse that syncs with your heartbeat, promising guidance where walls deceive. Ariadne's fingers linger on yours for a breath, her touch warm amid the chill, and she whispers instructions, her voice weaving suspense with intimate care. Tie one end here at the entrance and let it trail behind. It will not tangle nor break, but heed its pull. The labyrinth senses defiance and shifts like a living river. The metaphor of river crossings surfaces naturally. The thread of ford across the currents of confusion, where star omens from the eclipse might yet illuminate the way. You nod, securing the loose end to a protruding bronze rivet in the doorframe, the knot firm as an oath sworn before deities. Her eyes search yours, revealing the psychological tension of her position. Otter of the Oathkeeper, torn between loyalty and the ancient mysteries that bind her family to this curse. The Minotaur's roars carry the gods' riddles, she adds. But this line holds a quirk of my weaving, infused with olive oil from sacred groves. It glows faintly in utter dark, an anomalous function that reveals hidden inscriptions on the walls, aboos carved by Daedalus. Rules like speak no name of bull or man, lest echoes summon the beast's kin. A bizarre detail, for the glow demands a price. It fades memories of the surface world with each use. Trading glimpses of home for clarity in the depths, the thread's quirky natura secret of her craft. Blending the trickster's guile with the oracle's insights, settles in your mind a boon laced with consequence much like the sacred. Bargains in Norse legends where gifts from the Norns come threaded with inevitable loss. You test its weight, pulling gently, and the hum intensifies, a soft vibration that drowns the distant bellows for a moment. As if asserting dominance over the maze's sonic textures, the scrape of stone on stone, the whisper of air through fissures, and the damp patter of condensation like tears from the ceiling. Ariadne steps back, her form silhouetted against the fading torchlight from the antechamber, and presses the shuttle into your other hand of final token, its ivory warm from her grasp. Weave wisely, she says, echoing a proverb from Cretan hymns. Threads bind the hero to the stars, damn sever them and fall to earth. The words carry epic cadence, seeding the tale with motifs of celestial signs and cursed relics, her gift a counter to the blood price the labyrinth exacts. A first-person confessional emerges in the hush, as if I, the pilgrim narrator of these timeless stories, lean close. In retelling the weaves of Greek mythology, where deities toy with mortal strands, I've held such threads myself in dreams. Feeling their hum promise escape, yet whisper of the costs etched in silence. The doors begin to close, guards murmuring protests. But Ariadne holds her ground a moment longer, her silent plea from the court now voiced in this act of rebellion. You clutch the spool, the silk uncoiling smoothly as you take your first step into the left corridor. The group trailing with hesitant trust, their hands brushing the walls for orientation. The entrance seals behind with a thud, plunging you into near dark. The thread's faint glow, awakening like a vein of light, illuminating the first inscription. A warning of threshold guardians ahead, spectral figures demanding oaths for passage. The corridor narrows, the air growing heavier with the scent of earth and faint incense residue, as if rituals once burned here to appease underworld guides. You lead onward, the hum of the thread, a constant companion. Guiding past a false turn where shadows pool like ink, evoking the psychological intrigue of illusions yet to come. Echoes of the tribute's breaths mingle with the maze's own, a bellow rising sporadically, closer now, testing the line's power. The glow reveals more carvings, fragments of star omens, eclipses, foretelling trials where heroes must trade voices for visions, and you pause to anoint the thread with the oracle's vial, the oil seeping in with a sizzle, brightening its luminescence briefly. Your companions murmur gratitude, one youth gripping your shoulder, the shared resolve forging bonds amid the devouring dark. Deeper in, the path twists, the thread pulling taut at a junction. Urging right where instinct screams left, its hum a defiant song against the hunger that presses from all sides. Sensory details sharpen, the chill sweat on your neck, the iron temps under each breath, the subtle creak of stone settling like a beast shifting in sleep. Ariadne's gift anchors you, unspooling fate's design one deliberate step at a time. But the Minotaur's stirrings grow insistent, a roar that vibrates the walls, challenging the silken defiance. But the question that remains is, as the thread leads you through these initial shadows, will its glowing secrets unveil the maze's heart, or merely delay the inevitable confrontation with the curse's roaring core? The corridor slopes imperceptibly downward, each step drawing you further into the labyrinth's embrace. The threads glow, casting elongated shadows that flicker like specters on the uneven walls, revealing veins of quartz that pulse with an inner light, as if the earth itself breathes. You press on, the spool in your hand unspooling with a soft, insistent whisper. Its silken trail snaking behind like a lifeline tethered to the world above, while the air thickens around you, heavy with the scent of damp earth-rich loamy, and laced with the faint coppery temps of forgotten blood. Remnants of tributes who wandered these paths before, their essences absorbed into the stone like offerings to chthonic deities. The group's breaths come in ragged unison, the tributes clustering closer as the path narrows, forcing single file, their robes brushing against the walls with a rasp that amplifies in the confined space, turning every movement into an echo of vulnerability. You feel the descent's weight settling on your shoulders, psychological tension building like the slow coil of a serpent. The maze's maw widening not in space, but in the creeping realization that this is no mere prison, it's a living ritual, designed to strip heroes bare before the divine judgment at its core. Further down, the floor levels into a broader chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow, where stalactites hang like the fangs of some colossal beast. Dripping water that pools in shallow basins at your feet, sacred puddles, perhaps invoking the motif of river crossings where each ford demands a toll of reflection. You halt the group here, the thread pulling taut, as if urging caution, and kneel to examine one pool, its surface rippling with your approach, mirroring the faint glow above. In the depths of Minoan Greek mythology, such underground waters tied to local legends of the island's cave sanctuaries, where initiates underwent purification rites in sacred springs around 1500 BCE, historical practices that cleansed the body for spiritual trials, blending hygiene with the mystical to prepare souls for encounters with the underworld. You dip a finger into the cool liquid, feeling its unnatural warmth, a subtle current that stirs memories unbidden, flashes of the harbor's sun. Ariadne's touch, the oracle's milky gaze traded glimpses, as if the water exacts its price, even now softening the edges of your resolve with nostalgic ache. The chamber's walls bear deeper inscriptions here, illuminated by the thread's anointed sheen, spirals and horned figures etched in ochre, depicting rituals of the bull cult dancers vaulting over beasts, priests pouring libations of milk and blood. You trace one with your free hand, the stone cool and slick, and a faint hum rises from the thread, syncing with the drip-drip of the stalactites, creating a sonic texture that envelops the space like a hymn to forgotten gods. Emotions surge within you, a mix of awe and creeping dread, the epic scope of this descent clashing with the intimate fear of isolation. Each tribute's face, reflecting your own shadowed determination. One maiden whispers a prayer to Demeter for Earth's mercy, her voice trembling while the broad-shouldered youth grips his amulet, eyes darting to the branching tunnels ahead. 3 paths each, marked by a carved taboo. No light but the inner flame. Speak not of surface skies. Offer breath before the turn. These rules, binding as Mino's decree, evoke the labyrinth's logic, where violations summon threshold guardians or cursed relics, escalating the trials with consequential costs. You choose the central path, guided by the thread's insistent tug, its hum growing louder as you step over the basin's edge, the water splashing softly like a ritual baptism into the maze's domain. The air shifts immediately, denser now, carrying the musty residue of incense long burned out. mingled with the earthy rot that speaks of chambers undisturbed for ages. The walls close in again, forcing you to duck under low arches hewn from living rock. The ceiling brushing your hair with damp tendrils of moss-sensory creep that heightens the immersion. Ow. Cold beads of moisture trickling down your neck like the sweat of unseen watchers. Behind you, the group murmurs fragments of proverbs to steady their nerves. Oaths live in the cut, one in tones. Call back to the throne room's whisper, binding their shared fate. You glance back, ensuring the thread remains unbroken. Its blue gleam a defiant vein against the encroaching black. But the distant roar answers a bellow that vibrates through the stone. Closer than before, shaking loose pebbles that patter like rain from above. Deeper still, the path opens into a narrow gallery, its floor uneven with jutting roots of ancient cedars that pierce the earth from the palace gardens far overhead, their bark rough and resinous underfoot, releasing a faint balsamic scent that cuts through the dampness. Here you encounter the first artifact, a small altar niche, bedded in the wall, holding a bronze chalice etched with star omens constellations aligned in eclipse. Ash! Much like the night's portent. You approach cautiously, the thread humming approval, and peer inside. The vessel brims with a viscous oil, dark as night, its surface shimmering with anomalous flecks that seem to move like trapped stars. This mythic relic, a quirky, bizarre detail from Daedalus Forge, serves as an underworld guide's offering. Pouring it anoints the path ahead, illuminating hidden doors with ethereal light. But its taboo rule demands a traded memory. The pourer forgets a cherished face. The cost woven into the god's capricious design, turning boon into subtle erosion of the self. In these ancient mysteries, such artifacts echo the deity's temperament, where Poseidon's gifts always carry the sea's unforgiving tide. You hesitate, emotions churning, the hero's fire, urging action, yet the oracle's warning of blood prices tempering haste. A first-person confessional surfaces softly, as if I, the teller of Norse legends and Greek epics, interject from the tale's edge. In descending these mythic depths, where heroes barter pieces of soul for passage, I've pondered how the heart's chambers mirror the maze each turn, a choice that echoes eternally. The tributes watch expectantly, their breaths shallow in the thickening air, and you decide, tipping the chalice just enough to let a few drops fall onto the thread. The silk absorbs it instantly, flaring with a soft radiance that reveals a concealed crevice to the right, a false wall, now aglow, leading to what might be a shortcut or snare. The price hits then, a fleeting blankness. Ariadne's features blurring in your mind for a heartbeat replaced by the roar's insistent pull. You shake it off, leading the group through the crevice, the chalice's light fading behind like a spent omen. The descent steepens, stairs carved in rough-hewn blocks winding into profounder dark. The scents intensifying damp earth, giving way to the sharper bite of minerals, like iron ringing under strained breath. Echoes of the bellow grow rhythmic, almost a heartbeat syncing with your own, propelling the psychological intrigue as the maze tests your unity. The thread pulls onward, unspooling fate's design. But the walls seem to sweat now, cold stone beating with moisture that tastes of salt on your lips when you brush it away. Ritual details emerge in the carvings, scenes of oath keepers swearing before horned figures, taboos against turning back without a guide's boon. Your companions falter at a narrow ledge over a chasm, the void below exhaling up draughts laced with forgotten blood's Thames. But the thread's glow steadies them, a silken bridge across the abyss. As the stairs bottom out into a vast echoing hall, the air vibrates with the Minotaur's nearness. Its roars no longer distant, but a thunder that shakes your core, the devouring hunger palpable in every shadow. The thread hums urgently, pointing to a grand archway ahead, but shadows stir within, hinting at trials yet to unfold. But the question that remains is, in this maw's deepening grip, will the artifact's lights guide you to the beast's lair, or lure you into the very heart of the curse's unraveling? The grand archway looms before you, its edges jagged as if clawed by some primordial force, framing a vista of twisting paths that spiral away into the labyrinth's bowels, illuminated sporadically by the thread's persistent glow, which now flickers like a candle in a gale, casting the stone in hues of ethereal blue. You lead the tributes through it, the air shifting from the hall's vast echo to a more intimate constriction, the walls curving inward like the ribs of a colossal skeleton. forcing you to sidestep protruding ledges slick with moisture that seeps from unseen fissures above. The moans begin almost immediately soft at first, rising like mist from the fog-shrouded valleys of the Lethe. Indistinct murmurs that blend with the drip of water and the shuffle of your group's weary steps, but growing clearer as you navigate the first twist. Voices that plead and wail in fragments of ancient tongues, questioning not just your direction, but the very essence of your survival in this devouring realm. You press a hand to the wall for balance, feeling the stone vibrate subtly, as if the lost souls trapped within it stir at your passage. Their presence is a psychological undercurrent that tugs at the edges of your forged resolve, whispering doubts into the epic cadence of your quest. The path veers sharply left, descending a series of uneven steps, worn smooth by countless Vitor Clawsby, for opening into a gallery where the moans coalesce into discernible laments, echoing off vaulted ceilings lost in shadow. Turn back to thread lies. Double. Quotes. One voice sighs, feminine and faint, like wind through cedar branches. While another, guttural and male, growls, the beast claims all.
Oh, no glory in the depths.
Your companions falter, the maiden clutching her robe's hem, eyes wide with the terror of isolation as the sounds envelop you, a sonic tapestry woven from the maze's sonic textures, the low rumble of shifting earth, the plink of falling droplets, and now these spectral choruses that rise and fall like tides under an eclipse. You uncoil more of Ariadne's gift, the silk humming reassuringly, its glow revealing faded murals on the walls, scenes of Minoan youths in ritual dance, their forms blurred as if erased by time. A local legend from Crete's cave traditions, where echoes in sacred grottos were believed to house the voices of initiates who perished in trials. A historical echo of the island's mystery cults around 1400 BCE, where such sounds guided or misled the living in initiations blending death and rebirth. You pause at a junction, the thread pulling taut toward a narrow chute ahead. But the moans intensify here, swirling around you like incense smoke in a temple rite, carrying scents of salt and decay that cling to your skin, evoking the motif of sacred bargains where souls barter for passage. Emotions churn within the group, a youth's quiet sob. The broad-shouldered one's clenched jaws, the voices personalize, addressing you by name. Theseus, why lead them to the horns? The psychological tension mounts, each lament a mirror to your own fears. The devouring hunger of the labyrinth manifesting not in claws yet, but in this assault on the will, stripping away the hero's fire layer by layer. You speak then, voice steady amid the din, invoking a proverb from the oracle's whispers. Echoes fade where steps endure. Heed the thread, not the shade. The words rally them, but inside, doubt coils like a river's undercurrent, the moans rising higher. Questioning your path to survival as if the lost souls sense the costs ahead, traded memories, blood prices unpaid. Deeper into the twisting paths, the gallery gives way to a series of interconnected alcoves, each one a pocket of amplified sorrow. The walls pitted with niches that hold remnants of past tributes, shattered amulets of bone-wilted garlands of myrtle, now dust and here. A quirky, bizarre artifact that catches the thread's light, a small obsidian mirror, propped in one niche, its surface unnaturally smooth and reflective, humming faintly like the shuttle's echo. This relic, tied to the goddess Hecate, underworld guide and mistress of crossroads in Greek mythology, bears a taboo temperament. Gaze into it, and it reveals the soul's faces, allowing communion for clues to the maze's secrets. But its anomalous function demands a price. The viewer hears only truths laced with the viewer's deepest regrets. A bizarre rule where Hecate's whim turns guidance into torment. The mirror sweating cold beads that taste of iron when touched, as if weeping the blood of forgotten oaths. You approach warily, the moans peeking around it, and peer in. Your reflection warps first, then clears to show a spectral youth. His eyes hollow, whispering, the central vein leads to the heart, but cross the blood river without silence. And the guardian wakes. The mirror's gift, a fragment of map and voice, settles in your mind, but the cost follows. A surge of regret for the Athens you left. The father's face blurring like the chalice's toll, earlier heightening the sensory creep as the alcove's air turns. Clammy stone, sweating against your palm. A first-person confessional drifts through the narrative, as if I, the storyteller of these ancient mysteries, confide in the hush, in tracing the paths of heroes through Norse legends' shadowed halls. Where echoes of the slain question the living stride, I've learned that survival's thread phrase not from stone, but from the soul's unheeded calls. You shatter the compulsion to linger, pulling the group onward, the threads hum, drowning the moans momentarily as you veer into the chute. Its walls so close your shoulders brush both sides, the voices pursuing like mist, fading to murmurs, but never silence. The chute spits you into a lower level, a warren of looping corridors where the paths double back on themselves, the moans now a constant underlayer, rising like fog from grates in the floor vents that exhaled the labyrinth's breath, cool and laced with the faint ring of iron deep below. Ritual details emerge in the gloom. Carved taboos on thresholds offer no name to the void, and scattered relics, like a cedar splinter inscribed with a hymnal line. When stars shift, grief shifts with them, a callback to the eclipse's omen, seeding doubt amid the twists. Your companion's tire breaths labored, one stumbling into a wall that yields a hollow thud, revealing a hidden cell where a moan solidifies into a vishuna. Shade of a past tribute, translucent and pleading, her form dissolving like smoke when you offer silence as toll per the mirror's clue. The encounter escalates the trials, her whisper revealing a star-aligned junction ahead, but at the cost of your voice growing hoarse, as if the void claims echoes of your own words. Navigating these loops, the thread guides unerringly, its glow pulsing with each turn, but the moans evolve, personalizing further. Will you trade us all for glory? They query, the psychological intrigue peaking as survival's path blurs with the shade's collective despair. Scents intensify, damp moss giving way to the sharper bite of minerals. Like the salt of unshed tears, while the distant roar punctuates the laments, a bellow that shakes dust from the ceiling, pattering like ritual rain. You ford a shallow rivulet crossing the path, its waters black and whispering. Demanding a pause where you anoint the thread again, the oils sizzle, briefly silencing the voices. But they return, softer, insidious, questioning the choices that led here. As the paths straighten into a foreboding straightaway, the moans coalesce into a chorus, mist-like tendrils seeming to curl at your ankles. The devouring hunger palpable in their pull. The thread tugs ahead, toward what the shade hinted as the blood river's edge. But the echoes linger, their questions etching into your thoughts. But the question that remains is, amid these lost souls' rising pleas, will their misty warnings steer you from the guardian's wrath, or entangle your survival in the very web of the dead's unresolved fates? The straightaway stretches before you like a vein in the labyrinth's stony heart, its walls flaring wider to accommodate the growing hum of the earth. A vibration that starts as a subtle thrum beneath your sandals and builds into a rhythmic pulse, sinking with the thread's glow as it leads you onward through the haze of lingering moans. You feel the ground tremble first, a low quiver that ripples up through your legs, loosening pebbles that skitter across the floor like fleeing insects. The air thickening with the scent of disturbed dust and deeper primal musk, as if the maze exhales the breath of something ancient and roused from slumber. The tributes freeze behind you, their whispers dying into sharp intakes of breath while you press forward. The silken line taut in your grip, its anointed sheen flickering erratically now, casting the corridor in stuttering blues that dance across carvings of charging bulls, their horns etched in bold strokes that seem to curl toward you with intent. This awakening stirs the psychological tension to a fever. Pitch the devouring hunger of Greek mythology, manifesting not in shadows alone, but in the very bones of the island, testing the limits of your courage as the hero's fire flickers against the encroaching primal rage. The tremor intensifies, evolving from quiver to quake, the walls groaning as if protesting the intrusion, fine cracks spider-webbing across the stone-like veins under strained skin, releasing puffs of cool air laced with the tang of iron and wet clay materials of ancient Minoan forges, where craftsmen hammered bronze into tools of ritual and ruin. You steady yourself against a protruding ledge, the rock cool and unyielding, but the vibration travels up your arm, resonating in your chest like the oracle's whispered warnings made manifest, her prophecy of the beast's riddles now echoing in this physical upheaval. In the heart of Cretan lore, such tremors tied to local legends of the island's seismic fury. Historical earthquakes around 1600 BCE that toppled palaces and birthed tales of Poseidon's earth-shaking wrath. Events that wove into the myths of deities punishing broken oaths, much like Mino's refusal of the white bull, turning the land itself into an accomplice in the curse. The ground bucks again, harder this time, sending a tribute stumbling into you, her gasp swallowed by the rising rumble that drowns the moans, transforming the spectral chorus into a cacophony of silence pleas. You call out, softly, voice cutting through the din with methodical calm. Hold the line, the thread knows the way. Invoking. Ariadne's gift is anchor, its hum now competing with the earth's growl, a silken defiance against the awakening below. Emotions surge in the group fear, etching lines on young faces' resolve. Hardening in the youth's clenched fists, says the primal rage announces itself fully. A bellow erupts from the depths, not muffled now but thunderous, shaking dust from the ceiling in a gritty shower that stings your eyes, coats your tongue with the taste of ancient earth. The sound rolls through the corridor like a wave crashing in a river crossing gone awry, carrying the motif of sacred bargains where the gods demand tribute in flesh and fortitude. The Minotaur's voice, a guttural hymn fragment, rage feeds the oath. Come, hero, pay the price. You feel it in your core, this test of courage. The beast stirring not random, but a response to your descent. As if the labyrinth's logic senses the thread's intrusion and rouses its guardian to escalate the trials. Each quake a step closer to the blood price of confrontation. Deeper along the straightaway, path dips into a fault line, natural fissure widened by eons of tremors, where the ground's unrest peaks, the walls sweating beads of moisture that trickle like blood from the cracks, pooling at your feet in shallow rivulets that reflect the thread's erratic light. You ford this impromptu river of seepage, the water cold and viscous. Clinging to your robes like the costs of boons yet unpaid, each step splashing with a wet smack that punctuates the bellows. The primal rage awakens further, the roars coming in waves now, timed to the quakes, vibrating the air until your teeth ache, a sensory creep that blurs the line between stone and beast. The maze's sonic textures amplifying the horror, the grind of shifting slabs, the hiss of escaping air from fissures, and the distant scrape of something massive hooves on stone, perhaps testing the limits of your endurance. One companion whispers of star omens, recalling the eclipse's shadow as a portent of this very stirring. The celestial signs aligning with the earth's fury, seeding doubt amid the epic scope. You pause at the fissure's nadir, the thread pulling insistently toward a side passage that branches upward, its glow revealing a cursed relic. Embedded in the wall, a horn fragment curved and yellowed, protruding like a trap from the stone, humming with the same primal frequency as the roars below. This artifact, a bizarre quirk of the Minotaur's domain, serves as a threshold guardian's lure. Grasp it, and it stills the quakes momentarily, granting a vision of the beast's path, but its anomalous function exacts a taboo price. The holder's courage wanes, replaced by flashes of the monster's rage, as if shared a rule where the horn's texture rough as barnacle-scarred. Driftwood imprints the fear of deities' temperaments, turning the hero's resolve to trembling echoes. In these ancient mysteries, such relics echo the trickster's games, where Hephaestus forges birthed tools that both aid and afflict, much like Norse legends of cursed weapons that bond to their wielder's doom. You resist the urge, fingers brushing its curve, feeling the pull of traded bravery, but withdraw. The threads hum, urging restraint, its silken voice a counter to the horn's siren call. A first-person confessional emerges in the quake's lull, as if I, the audio weaver of these timeless tales, confide through the rumble. In voicing the stirrings of mythic beasts, where heroes face the earth's own wrath in Greek mythology's shadowed folds, I've trembled at the rage's echo, knowing courage is forged not in silence, but in the roar's defiant face. The group huddles closer, sharing breaths amid the tremors, one youth offering a proverb from his village. When the ground wakes, the bold stand firm. The fearful feed its hunger. The words bolster you, but the bellows crescendo the ground, heaving in response, cracking the fissure wider and forcing a scramble up the side passage ropes. Tearing on jagged edges, the scent of blood years, now a shallow cut mingling with the musk. The awakening tests every limit, courage fraying like the thread under strain. Yet holding, as the roars reveal a pattern, not chaos, but a hunt's prelude, the beast circling its lair in seasonal fury. Under the sign of Taurus rising in the autumn skies above, the passage levels out into a chamber of echoing vaults, the quakes subsiding to aftershocks that rattle loose stones. But the primal rage lingers in the air, heavy and expectant. The roars fading to growls that vibrate your bones, a reminder of the costs, scars from falls, memories traded in the relic's temptation, silence owed to the depths. You recount the thread, coiling slack, its glow steadying as the earth quiets, but the test endures, courage stretched thin amid the labyrinth's living pulse. Ritual taboos surface in your mind, offer no fear to the stirrings, lest they amplify, while the distant moans resume. Now harmonizing with the growls, a chorus of ancient mysteries where heroes and deities clash in the balance. The thread tugs onward, toward what feels like the maze's pulsing core, the awakening a harbinger of trials where underworld guides await with their consequential boons. As the chamber opens to yet another fork, the ground's final tremor sends a cascade of dust, the roars echoing one last challenge, the devouring hunger sated for now but insatiable. But the question that remains is, with this primal rage awakened and your courage tested to its brink, will the beast's stirring herald your path to victory, or summon the full weight of the curse's unforgiving horns? The vault widens into a cavernous expanse, its arches soaring into obscurity where the thread's glow barely reaches, leaving the upper reaches shrouded in a velvet black that presses down like the weight of unuttered prayers. The air here stagnant and cool, carrying the faint, lingering perfume of saffron that clings to the stone as if carried from the palace's sunlit halls through invisible conduits. You pause in the gloom, the tributes collapsing against the walls in weary heaps, their breaths ragged echoes in the vastness. While you lean against a smooth pillar of basalt, its surface etched with faint spirals that mimic the unspooling thread in your hand. The illusions from the previous chambers have receded to faint after-images at the edges of vision, ghostly flickers of faces and horns that dissolve. When stared at directly but their psychological residue lingers, a subtle ache in your temples. As if the maze has imprinted its deceptions on your thoughts, blurring the line between endured trial and encroaching madness, the distant roar rumbles once more, a low growl that vibrates the floor faintly, but it's the silence that follows, heavy and expectant, that draws your mind upward away from the devouring depths to her Ariadne waiting above in the shadowed terraces of Knossos. You close your eyes for a moment, the threads hum a steady pulse in your palm, and imagine her, there perched on the palace's outer walls under the star-pricked canopy of night, her crimson gown billowing in the Aegean breeze like a banner of unspoken vows. The image forms vividly unbidden yet anchoring, her dark hair unbound now whipping across her face as she gazes toward the labyrinth's hidden maw, the shuttle idol in her lap, its ivory form catching moonlight that filters through cypress branches. Her loyalty, forged in the court's silent plea and sealed with the gift of this silken line, stands as a fragile anchor against the abyss that threatens to swallow you whole, a human counterpoint to the gods' capricious designs, where deities like Athena might weave wisdom's nets, but mortals like her thread the needle of compassion through the storm. You feel it acutely, this distant vigil, her presence a psychological tether that steadies the hero's fire amid. The epic descent recalling the warmth of her touch at the threshold, the subtle hum of the spool syncing with your own. Resolve now stretched thin by the maze's relentless trials. In your mind's eye the palace sprawls around her, its frescoed walls depicting leaping dolphins, and blooming pomegranates that seem to watch her vigil. Symbols of Minoan Crete's seafaring sola historical fact woven into the island's legends, where around 2000 BCE, this civilization mastered trade routes across the Mediterranean, their ships carrying myths and oaths like cargo, blending local tales of sea gods with the grander pantheon of Greek mythology, turning Knossos into a nexus where mortal loyalties clashed with divine decrees. Ariadne sits alone, perhaps evading her father's watchful guards, her fingers tracing the edge of a low balustrade, worn smooth by generations of royal contemplations. Whispering fragments of hymns to Hestia for hearth and home, threads of the heart outlast the stone. Weave true, and the abyss yields. The words, a proverb born from Cretan oral traditions, echo in your imagination, seeding the motif of sacred bargains where her loyalty demands its own price, exile from her bloodline's shadow. Memories traded for the hope of your return. A cost that mirrors the labyrinth's tolls, turning her anchor into a chain of shared consequence. The gloom deepens as you open your eyes, the tributes stirring restlessly, one youth murmuring of water. His throat parched from the descent's dry whispers, but you hold the pause, letting Ariadne's imagined vigil infuse strength. Her fragile loyalty a beacon against the sensory creep of this vault, the chill draft rising from grates in the floor. Carrying the damp cedar scent of roots delving deeper, and the subtle patter of unseen rivulets carving their own paths through the stone, like rivers crossing unseen thresholds below. You envision her rising now, pacing the terrace. Her gaze fixed on the stars' alignment, the same eclipse-touched heavens that omened your arrival. Shifting constellations that foretell trials where fate weavers like the Moirai spin threads of heroes and their anchors. Her form silhouetted against the flickering torches of the palace guard, a lone figure defying the Oathkeeper's isolation. This image bolsters you, the psychological intrigue of her vigil, weaving grandiosity into the tale. Where deities' games gain human depth, her waiting a ritual of endurance that parallels your own. Taboos unspoken but felt. She must not speak your name aloud, lest Minos spies unravel the gift. A bizarre rule tied to the shuttle's quirk in artifacts said to be blessed by Aphrodite. Its anomalous function allowing the weaver to sense the threads, bear her across distances, but only through dreams laced with visions of the abyss. A temperament of love's goddess that demands emotional scars for glimpses of the beloved's peril. You straighten, the thread tugging gently, as if responding to her distant pull. Its silk warming slightly in your grasp, a subtle miracle that counters the vault's encroaching cold. The tributes look to you, faces etched with fatigue and the illusion's lingering doubt. And you share a portion of the vision, not the full intimacy, but the essence. Above, she watches. Her loyalty, our guide through this shadow. A first-person confessional slips in softly, as if I, the storyteller bridging Norse legend's solitary vigils with these Greek depths, confide from the narrative's edge, in painting the weights of those left behind in ancient mysteries where heroes delve and anchors hold. I've felt the pull of such loyalties myself, fragile as spider silk, yet unyielding as fate's decree. The group nods, resolve, flickering anew. One maiden clutching her amulet with renewed fervor, the air lightening imperceptibly as the shared image dispels the gloom's heavier tendrils. Yet the pause cannot last. The labyrinth stirs, a faint scrape echoing from the vault's far end like hooves testing stone, reminding you of the primal rage awakened earlier. Its bellows a distant thunder that punctuates Ariadne's imagined whispers. You lead onward, the thread unspooling into a descending ramp slick with mineral deposits. The walls here adorned with inscriptions of star omens and cursed relics, motifs recurring like leitmotifs of the gods' watchful eyes. Scents shift to the sharper bite of ozone as if lightning lingers in the air from some subterranean storm, the sonic textures evolving. The drip of water now joined by a low, resonant hum from the stone itself mimicking.
Ow.
The shuttle's quirk as if the maze envies her vigil and seeks to mimic its power. Emotions swirl gratitude for her anchor, tempered by the fear that her loyalty might fracture under the weight of discovery. A blood price paid in isolation above, as you ford these depths below. The ramp levels into another corridor narrower, and winding the threads glow, illuminating a small alcove with a relic of its own. Cedar box sealed with wax imprinted by a royal signet, perhaps left by Ariadne herself, containing dried herbs for strength, their aroma bursting forth when you crack it open, a direct link to her care. The bizarre detail surfaces, the box whispers faintly when opened, an anomalous function tied to Demeter's temperament as Earth Mother. Deity releasing not just scent but echoes of the surface wind through olive groves, waves on the shore, a taboo boon that reassures but demands. Silence afterward, lest the whispers attract the shades from earlier chambers. You distribute the herbs, the tributes chewing slowly, the flavors grounding them in the world above. Her vigil manifesting in this tangible gift, fragile yet profound. As the corridor twists toward what feels like the abyss's rim, the roar grows nearer. A challenge to her anchor's hold, the stone vibrating with the beast's impatience. You glance back at the gloom, carrying her image forward, loyalty's thread-binding surface and depth in the dance of heroes and deities. But the question that remains is, with Ariadne's distant vigil steadying your steps against the rising abyss, will her fragile loyalty prove the salvation that unravels the curse, or the very chain that draws you deeper into its unforgiving maw? The fork ahead splits into a deceptive symmetry. The threads glow, pulling you toward the rightward path, where the chamber's vaults give way to a series of interconnected halls that pulse with an unnatural rhythm, as if the labyrinth's heart beats in time with your steps, each chamber larger than the last, walls curving in impossible arcs that defy the eye's geometry. You lead the tributes onward, the aftershocks of the primal rage fading into a subtle sway, but the air changes, here cooler, denser, laced with the faint, acrid scent of smoldering cedar. As if incense from a distant ritual seeps through the stone, mingling with the ever-present dampness to create a veil that blurs edges and softens sounds. The moans from earlier souls dissolve into silence, replaced by a hush that amplifies your own breaths. Ragged and echoing, while shadows lengthen unnaturally, stretching from the thread's light like fingers probing for weakness. You confront the shifting walls first as a trick of fatigue, but soon realize the truth. The stone undulates subtly, rippling like water disturbed by a stone's throw, mirroring your deepest fears and forms that emerge from the gloomed faces of lost loved ones, twisted in accusation, or the looming silhouette of the Minotaur's horns.
Ow.
Curling from the cracks like smoke given form, the illusions take hold gradually, the path narrowing into a corridor where the walls begin to warp, protruding into bas-reliefs that animate under the blue sheen of Ariadne's gift, figures of heroes from Greek mythology stepping forth in half-life, their eyes hollow with the weight of unfinished quests. You see your father, Aegeus, etched in the stone to your left, his form aging before your eyes, mouth opening in a silent plea. Return, where Athens falls, a mirror to the blood price of your voyage, the sacred bargain with fate that left the ordinary world behind. The tributes gasp behind you, one youth halting as his own illusion manifests. A spectral farm from Attica, fields withering under an eternal eclipse, the star, omens from the night of your departure replaying in crumbling soil, blurring the line between stone and shadow until he reaches out, fingers passing through the mirage with a chill that numbs his hand. Psychological tension coils tighter, the epic scope of the descent now intimate. Each hero's fire tested by personal phantoms that whisper taboos, turn back, or trade your memories for the beast's mercy, their voices a deceptive echo of the oracle's calm cadence, luring you toward false turns where the thread strains but holds. Deeper into this heart of illusions, the corridor opens into a domed chamber, its ceiling a vault of interlocking stones that shift like the plates of a living mosaic, rearranging patterns of constellations, eclipses, swallowing stars in perpetual cycle, a celestial motif that evokes the gods' capricious oversight. You ford a shallow basin here, its water still and reflective. It's not the rivulet from before, but a deliberate pool that mirrors the wall's deceptions upward. Doubling the fears until the air shimmers with them, Ariadne's form appears across the water, her gaze turning accusatory of the shuttle. In her hand unraveling into threads that bind your wrists, a manifestation of the forbidden knowledge she shared now, twisted into doubt. Did her gift save you or doom the group to this devouring trap? The water's surface ripples without cause, sending waves that distort the illusions further. Scents rising from it like offerings, salt of the Aegean. Mingled with the iron temps of blood price unpaid, a sensory creep that makes your skin prickle as if the pool drinks in your hesitation. In Minoan local legends, such reflective chambers drew from the island's sacred caves, where priests used still waters for scrying around 1700 BCE. Historical practices that harnessed natural pools to divine the future, blending the mystical with the mundane to unveil truths or illusions that guided rulers like Minos in their oaths to deities. You steady the group at the basin's edge, voice methodical amid the rising whispers of the phantoms.
These are the mazes. Tricks hold to the thread. Let it anchor what the shadows steal. But the illusions press, escalating the trials with the trickster's guile walls, shifting to form labyrinthine barriers that part and reform, forcing choices where sacred bargains tempt. A doorway of light promises escape, guarded by a spectral underworld-gooded figure with eyes like polished obsidian,
offering a boon of clarity for the price of a traded secret. Your mother's lullaby fading from memory as you decline, the door dissolving into stone that laughs softly, a bizarre quirk of the labyrinth's heart. This artifact of deception, infused with Hermes' temperament, the swift-footed messenger and trickster deity bears an anomalous function. The wall's shifts create auditory mirages, sounds of safety that mimic temple bells or loved ones' calls, but their taboo rule demands silence from the hearer. Speak to them, and the illusion solidifies. Trapping the speaker in a pocket of eternal shadow, a rule where the stone's texture turns velvety, like flesh under breath, drawing the unwary into embraces that never release. The chamber's illusions intensify, the domed ceiling lowering as if breathing. Compressing the air until breaths come short, the tribute's fears manifesting collectively. Now a chorus of phantom voices reciting proverbs twisted to torment. Oaths live in the cut. And yours bleeds dry, a callback to Minos' throne, binding the group's unity in shared dread. Emotions peak. The maiden weeps silently, her illusion of family altar crumbling under the Minotaur's shadow. While the youth swings at his fading fields, fist meeting unyielding rock that yields no pain but echoes his frustration back amplified. You grip the thread tighter, its hum a defiant pulse against the chaos, anointing it once more with the oracle's vial, oil sizzling as it counters the mirages, causing walls to still briefly, revealing true paths etched in faint gold Daedalus hidden markers, guides for the builder's own escape. Yet the cost lingers, a subtle erosion, fragments of the journey blur, the harbor's waves softening in recall, traded for this momentary clarity in the devouring heart. A first-person confessional weaves through the tension, as if the pilgrim chronicler of Norse legends and ancient mysteries, interposed gently. In unraveling these veils of Greek mythology, where deities craft allusions to humble heroes, I've stared into mirrors of my own making, learning that shadows blur not the path, but the self who treads it. The group rallies at your urging, fording the basin together, the water parting illusions like mist under dawn. But they reform on the far side, more insistent. The Minotaur's form coalesces briefly in the dome's center. Not solid, but vaporous, its bellow a whisper that questions your courage. Face me in truth, or wander fears eternal. The thread pulls sharply left into a narrowing arch, where stone and shadow entwine scents of cedar incense. Peaking as if a ritual culminates here, the sonic textures shifting to a low hypnotic drone that lulls the weary blurring wakefulness with dream. Navigating the arch, the illusions follow. Walls mirroring the group's deepest scars, lost homes, broken oaths, until the path straightens into a vein of relative calm, the deceptions fading to peripheral flickers, leaving exhaustion in their wake. Ritual details surface in the quiet, taboos against gazing too long, lest the mirrors claim the eyes, and scattered relics like a fallen shard of obsidian that reflects only voids, a warning of the heart's true peril. The thread's glow steadies, guiding toward what feels like the core's antechamber. But the blurred line endures, fears lingering like echoes in the mind. The distant roar punctuates the hush, a reminder that the beast's rage awaits beyond the veils, its hunger sharpened by these trials. As the vein widens into another vault, the illusions subside to whispers, the stones stilling once more, but their imprint clings, testing the hero's mettle in the labyrinth's psychological forge. But the question that remains is, having confronted these mirrored fears in the heart's deceptive core, will the shadow's truths arm you against the beast, or fracture your resolve into the very illusions they birthed? The corridor's twists tighten like a noose drawn by unseen hands. The thread esglow, casting wavering pools of blue that illuminate clusters of jagged protrusions, stalagmites rising from the floor like petrified sentinels. Their surface is veined with quartz that catches the light in fractured prisms, turning the path into a mosaic of deceptive clarity. You navigate this narrowing vein with deliberate steps, the tributes trailing in a subdued line, the cedar herbs lingering bitterness on their tongues, a faint tether to Ariadne's vigil above. But the air shifts abruptly, growing colder and laced with a spectral chill that raises the hairs on your arms, as if the labyrinth exhales the breath of the unburied. The distant roar recedes to a muffled undercurrent, replaced by a new cadence, soft, insistent sighs that emanate from the shadows between the stalagmites. Not the moans of lost souls from earlier, but deliberate murmurs, voices bound and beckoning, drawing you toward a chamber where the walls recede into a semicircular alcove. Its floor a mosaic of cracked tiles, depicting rivers of ink-black water forking endlessly. A motif of crossings that demand more than steps to ford. You enter the alcove cautiously, the thread humming a warning note, and there they manifest. Not as illusions from the heart's deceptive core, but as spectral figures. Materializing from the gloom, translucent forms draped in tattered robes of faded saffron and white, their outlines shimmering like heat haze over Cretan plains in high summer. These trapped shades, bound by ancient taboos to this way station of the maze, hover at the edges of the mosaic, eyes glowing with the pallid light of forgotten stars. Their presences a psychological anchor amid the descent's mounting dread, revealing not just echoes, but the living costs of divine bargains struck in hubris or desperation. The first shade approaches, a woman with hair like unraveling threads, her form flickering as she extends a hand that passes through yours without touch, yet chills to the bone, whispering, "Hero of Athens, heed our tales. For we paid Poseidon's due when Minos would not the bull's curse claims more than flesh." You meet her gaze, feeling the weight of her binding, a taboo against leaving this spot without granting a listener. Silence a rule etched in the air like invisible chains, her voice weaving suspense with the calm inevitability of fate's ledger. The tributes cluster behind you, breaths held in the alcoves, hush as more shades gather, five in all archetypes of the labyrinth's victims. The oracle seer, with veiled eyes. The trickster youth grinning through pallor, the threshold guardian in rusted armor, the underworld guide with a lantern of cold flame, and the oathkeeper, his wrists marked by spectral manacles. They form a semicircle around the mosaic, their tales unfolding in overlapping murmurs that build an epic rhythm, each revelation a layer peeled from the god's capricious veil. The oracle seer speaks first, her voice a hiss like steam from earth's cracks, recounting a local legend from the caves of Ida, where Minoan priestesses around 1500 BCE communed with chthonic forces through trance rituals, historical practices that birthed prophecies tying the islands. Earthquakes to divine displeasure, much like the tremors you felt earlier, her bargain with an underworld deity for visions of the Minotaur's birth, a white bull emerging from sea foam. Twisted by Pasiphae's shame, costing her the warmth of sunlight, binding her here in eternal twilight. I saw the oath break, she intones, and traded my seasons for the sight. Now, stars shift above, but I dwell in eclipse. The trickster youth follows his grin, a bizarre quirk that belies his torment, a detail tied to Hermes' temperament as the sly messenger god. His spectral form carries a caduceus of shadow, an anomalous artifact that twitches like a living serpent when he gestures its function to unravel small illusions, revealing a hidden tile in the mosaic that shifts to show a safe crossing, but its taboo demands a laugh from the viewer. A rule where mirth echoes eternally in the shade's ears, amplifying their isolation until it frays the listener's own mirth into madness, a quirky rule where the staff's texture feels like writhing vines, drawing the unwary into games that end in traded joys. He demonstrates the caduceus uncoiling to point a path across the mosaic's rivers, but his tale reveals the cost. A bargain with the god for clever escape from an earlier trial, only to be ensnared by his own wit, bound to mislead or aid in capricious turns, his laughter a hollow echo that questions your survival's price. I dance the bull's horns, he chuckles, but the dance claimed my feet. Now, ford wisely, or join the jig. Emotions stir within you, pity, mingled with the hero's wary, resolve is the threshold. Dark. Guardian steps forward, his armor clinking faintly like iron, in a distant forge, recounting a sacred bargain with Ares for strength to challenge the beast. The cost of blood, price of eternal watch over this, crossing his form scarred by phantom wounds that weep shadow taboos, forbidding him to grant passage without a vow of return. I stood at the river's edge, he rumbles, oath sworn in starlight, but the gods took my stride. The mosaic drinks the hesitant. The underworld guide illuminates his lantern then, its cold flame casting the alcove in ghostly hues, revealing inscriptions on the walls, fragments of hymnal lines. Oaths live in the cut, cross with care, or the blade returns. His tale unfolds of ferrying shades through the maze's veins, a boon from Hades for safe passage of his kin, but bound by the taboo of never touching the living. His light a lure that trades memories of the surface for glimpses of the depths, evoking Ariadne's vigil as a parallel anchor, fragile against the divine costs. The Oathkeeper closes the circle, his manacles glowing with the heat of unbroken vows, his voice a gravelly cadence that builds the suspense to its peak. A merchant from ancient Thera who bargained with Zeus for prosperity, only to withhold tribute to Crete's curse bound here when the gods demanded balance. His tale exposing the Minotaur escort as a relic of all such pacts, a living embodiment where every roar echoes a divine debt unpaid. The Shade's presences thicken the air, scents of salt incense and damp cedar rising like offerings, the sonic textures layering their voices into a choral dirge that vibrates the stalagmite's sensory details that creep into your skin. The chill of their nearness, like frost on bronze, the faint ring of their chains under breath. You listen in silence, as their taboo demands. The thread humming approval, its glow syncing with the lantern to illuminate the mosaic's true forda, narrow bridge of tiles over the depicted rivers, leading deeper. A first-person confessional emerges amid the murmurs, as if I, the weaver of these Norse legends, spectral counsels and Greek bargains, pause to reflect, in gathering the voices of the bound in ancient mysteries, where heroes glean wisdom from the damned. I've heard the costs resonate, reminding us that divine boons are threads pulled from the soul's own loom. The tributes shift uneasily, absorbing the tales. Resolve tempered by the Shade's warnings of escalating trials ahead, tricksters' games. Oracle's visions, guardians, tolls each, revelation, a callback to the eclipse's omens, and the roar's primal call. Step forward at last, offering the vowed silence by nodding to the mosaic. The tiles shifting under the guide's light to form the bridge, the shades fading with sighs of release, their forms dissolving like mist at dawn, leaving the alcove quieter, heavier with their imparted weight. You cross the bridge carefully, the tiles cool and unyielding underfoot. The thread guiding across the symbolic rivers, scents of the shades lingering like ghosts in the air, their tales etching into your mind as maps of consequence. The alcove recedes behind, the path widening into another descent. But the roar stirs anew, closer, as if the beast senses the shade's secret shared. Ritual taboos from their word surface, speak no bargain aloud, lest it bind you to, while the mosaic's echo fades, propelling you toward the heart's unfolding perils. As the descent steepens, the shade's revelations cling like dew on cedar, illuminating the costs of the gods' games in the labyrinth's unforgiving logic. But the question that remains is, armed with these spectral truths of divine bargains tolls, will their bound tales light your way to the Minotaur's lair, or merely multiply the shadows of choices yet to come? The mosaic bridge fades into memory as the path plunges deeper, the alcove's spectral chill giving way to a humid warmth that rises from the labyrinth's lower veins. The air now thick and oppressive, laced with the musky temps of fur and sweat, as if the stone itself absorbs the essence of its guardian and exhales it back in warning. You lead the tributes down a sloping gallery, the threads glow steady, but dimmer here casting the walls in a subdued azure that reveals claw marks gouged into the rock-deep furrows that curve like the sweep of horns, fresh enough to suggest recent passage, turning the maze from static prison to a living entity, its corridors flexing in pursuit. The Shade's tales echo in your mind, their bound voices a chorus of caution against the costs of divine bargains. But the silence breaks abruptly with a sound that seizes your breath, the scrape of hooves on stone, deliberate and close, echoing from a parallel tunnel that branches unseen, the noise grinding like millstones under strain. Each step a declaration that the Minotaur's hunt has begun, transforming the labyrinth into a predator that stalks flesh and fate with unerring instinct. You freeze, hand raised to halt the group, the tributes pressing close in the gallery's confines, their eyes wide in the thread's faint light. The scrape growing rhythmic, now a trot that builds to a lope, reverberating through the walls like the earth's earlier tremors amplified. The sonic textures of the maze shifting from drip and murmur to this primal percussion. Hooves clattering over loose gravel that tumbles into your path from above, pattering like ritual rain before a sacrifice. The beast's presence turns the stone alive, its vibrations traveling up your legs as if the predator's weight presses the labyrinth into service. Corridors narrowing subtly where the walls seem to bulge. forcing you to sidestep protrusions that weren't there moments ago, the air humming with the low growl that underscores each scrape, a sound that coils tension in your chest, blurring the line between hunter and hunted in this devouring dance. Emotions flare among the group, the maiden's hand trembling on your arm. The youth's jaw set in defiant clench as the hunt's psychological weight bears down. The Minotaur, not a distant roar now, but an active force. Its pursuit a sacred bargain with the god's curse, demanding blood price in every echoing step. The gallery twists sharply right, the thread pulling urgently, but the hooves match your pace, scraping closer from the leftward branch, the noise circling like a noose tightening. Sense intensifying, the sharp animal reek cutting through the damp earth, mingled with the iron temps of anticipation, as if the beast's breath seeps through the fissures, hot and fetid. You urge the tribute's faster whispers of the shade's warnings surfacing. The river drinks the hasty, but there's no ford here, only the relentless vein of stone that funnels you onward, the labyrinth responding to the hunt by shifting paths, a false wall of rubble collapsing behind you with a rumble that mimics the beast's bellow-sealing retreat and propelling the chase. In Greek mythology's ancient mysteries, such pursuits echoed local legends from Cretan bull cults, where ritual hunts and sacred enclosures around 1450 BCE tested youth's mettle against live beasts. Historical games that symbolized the island's dominion over nature's fury, blending sport with the divine to honor Poseidon, the god whose broken oath birthed this very predator, turning the maze into a colosseum where heroes face deities' tempered wrath. The scrape accelerates, hooves pounding now, close enough that you feel the air displace in rhythmic gusts through a narrow vent overhead, the beast's growl a guttural underlayer that vibrates your teeth, turning the gallery into a living trap where every turn echoes its pursuit. Fate's thread straining as you duck under a low arch, the tribute scrambling after, abuds snagging on jagged edges that draw thin lines of blood-small scars, harbingers of greater costs. You glance back, the threads glow illuminating a fleeting shadow at the junction. Massive, horned its form, a blur of muscle and rage, eyes gleaming like embers in the dark. The hunt's grandiosity manifesting in this visceral nearness. The Minotaur's temperament, a quirky, bizarre detail born of divine anomalies, said to be infused with Dionysus' wild ecstasy. Its roars not mere fury, but hymnal fragments that induce a trance in the pursued. An anomalous function where the sound's texture, deep and resonant like wine fermenting in cedar vats, tempts the listener to pause in revelry. A taboo rule demanding resistance lest the ecstasy trade the hero's will for hallucinatory boons. Visions of feasts amid the horns that lure to doom. You shake off the growl's insidious pull, its cadence weaving into your thoughts like a trickster's riddle. Join the dance, hero, or flee the prance, a proverb twisted from Cretan rites. But the thread's hum counters it, grounding you as you veer into a side chamber. The hooves thundering past the entrance, the beast overshooting in its momentum, buying precious seconds. The chamber offers brief respite, its walls lined with alcoves, holding cursed relic shards of bronze horns, etched with star omens from eclipses past. Motifs that recur in the chase, celestial signs aligning with the hunt's escalation. You press the group into the deepest alcove, hearts pounding in unison, the scrape circling back now, slower, methodical, the predator sniffing the air through cracks, its breath a hot draft that carries the salt of sweat and the musk of unyielding purpose. A first-person confessional stirs amid the hush as if I, the teller of Norse legends' relentless pursuits and Greek heroes. Chases lean in from the tale's edge, in chasing the beasts of ancient mysteries. Where deities unleash their hounds on mortal trails, I've run these paths in spirit, feeling the scrape etch not just stone, but the soul's unyielding stride. The tributes huddle, breath shallow, to avoid detection as the hooves pause outside, scraping experimentally. The growl probing like an oracle's query, testing the limits of your concealment. You clutch the thread, anointing it swiftly with the vial's remnants. The oil sizzling faintly, its glow flaring to reveal a concealed grate in the floor, a possible escape to lower levels. But the taboo from the shades warns of river crossings below, where the hunt might follow unchecked. The beast circles the chamber's perimeter, its presence turning the space predatory, walls seeming to contract, as if the labyrinth aids its guardian. Scents peaking to overwhelm, the beast's primal odor, now mingled with the faint incense of the shades. A bizarre fusion that heightens the sensory creep. Cold stone sweating under the tension, iron ringing in your ears from the hooves, near misses. Ritual details from the cult legends surface offer no fear scent, lest it draw the bull's charge, but the air thickens with it anyway. The chase's blood price mounting in the form of frayed nerves and whispered prayers to Athena for cunning flight. You signal the group toward the grate, prying it open with a concealed dagger from your robe. The smuggled sword to cumbersome here, the metal groaning softly, but the hooves halt the growl, deepening into a snort that vibrates the floor as if the beast senses the shift. The thread tugs downward into the dark vent, a ford into unknown currents, while the scrape resumes, closer, the hunt's fate-weaving, turning every breath into a gamble. The tributes descend first, vanishing into the shaft. Their forms swallowed by shadow, and you follow last, the grate clanging shut behind. The growl erupting in frustration above, hooves battering the chamber as the labyrinth quakes in response, the predator's rage propelling the chase to new depths. The vent spirals into a tighter conduit, the scrape muffled but pursuing, the beast's hunt undeterred. Turning the maze's every vein into a vein of peril, flesh and fate intertwined in the god's unyielding game. But the question that remains is, as the Minotaur's hooves echo ever nearer in this living predator's domain, will the thread's guidance outpace the beast's relentless rage, or lead you straight into the jaws of its devouring verdict?
The vent constricts around you like the coils of a serpent awakened, its walls slick with condensation that soaks through your robe, turning the fabric heavy and cold against your skin as you slide downward in a controlled descent, the tribute's muffled cries echoing faintly ahead in the tight space. The thread trails behind you, its silken length scraping softly against the rough-hewn stone, the glow dimmed to a threadbare luminescence that barely pierces the enveloping black, but its hum persists. A defiant vibration that guides your hands along the narrowing chute. Fingers finding purchase on mineral-encrusted ledges that flake away like ancient oaths crumbling under pressure. Above, the beast's frustration erupts in a cacophony of battering hooves and guttural roars that shake the conduit, dust sifting down in gritty veils that sting your eyes and coat your throat with the taste of pulverized earth, the labyrinth responding with a series of ominous cracks. As if the Minotaur's rage fractures the very framework Daedalus wrought, turning escape into a precarious gamble where each shift risks collapse. The hunt's pursuit transforms the vent into a vein under siege, the air growing thicker with the beasts displaced, muskraw and overpowering, seeping through the stone like an insidious fog, minding you that no depth can fully sever the curse's tether. The god's design ensuring the predator's reach extends through every crevice. You emerge gasping into a lower chamber, a vast subterranean hollow, where the floor pools with shallow ink-black water that laps at your ankles, cold and viscous, carrying the faint metallic Thames of minerals leached from the depths, a river crossing. Manifest in this flooded expanse, its surface rippling with the aftershocks of the beast's assault above. The tribute scramble to their feet in the knee-deep flow, robes sodden and clinging, their faces pale masks in the thread's renewed glow as you uncoil more silk to anchor the group. The hum steadying into a rhythmic pulse that syncs with the water's subtle current, urging you across toward a far ledge where arched tunnels branched like the roots of some colossal cedar delving into the underworld. But the respite shatters almost immediately. The roar cascades down the vent like thunder channeled through a horn, the beast's hooves scraping furiously as it tears into the weakened stone fragments, tumbling into the pool with splashes that send ripples racing outward, the water churning as if sensing the impending breach. Psychological tension coils anew, the hunt's inevitability pressing like the water's rise, each splash a heartbeat counting down to confrontation. The Minotaur's temperament, that Dionysian quirk of ecstatic fury, infusing its pursuit with a wild, almost ritualistic fervor, as if the chase itself is a sacred dance, demanding participation or perdition. You wade forward, the water resisting with unnatural drag, scents blooming from its depths. The earthy rot of submerged relics mingling with the beast's approaching reek. A sensory assault that heightens the devouring hunger. The chamber's sonic textures amplifying the peril, the lap of waves against stone, the drip from stalactites overhead like erratic percussion, and now the escalating grind of the Minotaur's breach, claws rending rock with sounds like bronze on bone. Emotions surge in the group. The maiden slips, her cry swallowed by the flow, while the broad-shouldered youth hauls her up, his face set in grim determination, but fear flickers in their eyes. The shades' tales from the alcove resonating the river drinks, the hasty as the current tugs at your legs. A living entity that seems to pull toward the breached vent, luring the pursued back to the hunter. In these ancient mysteries of Greek mythology, such flooded undercrofts drew from Minoan engineering, marvels historical systems, and drainage systems in Knossos around 1700 BCE that harnessed underground aquifers for palace life but twisted here into mythic traps where water symbolized the Styx's toll, a threshold where heroes must ford not just liquid but the blood price of divine caprice. Poseidon's domain extending even below the earth to drown the unworthy in their oath's consequences. The thread leads unerringly to the ledge, but midway across, the breach succeeds. A massive slab crashes into the pool behind you, sending a wave surging forward that nearly sweeps the tributes off their feet, the Minotaur's form silhouetted in the jagged opening above, its bulk heaving as it leaps down, landing with a thunderous splash that sends water exploding in all directions. The beast's roar, a deafening blast that vibrates the chamber's walls, shaking loose stalactites that plummet like spears from the ceiling. You turn, heart pounding, the thread straining in your grip as the Minotaur shakes itself, water cascading from its muscled frame and curved horns that gleam wetly in the glow, eyes locking on you with a feral intelligence. The hunt culminating in this flooded arena where the labyrinth contracts around the confrontation, arches narrowing as if to force the clash. The beast advances slowly now, wading with deliberate splashes. Its hooves churning the water into froth, the growl modulating into that hymnal cadence, fragments of a Cretan rite, bull of the Vau. Claim what is due, its anomalous voice inducing a haze at the edges of your vision, the taboo temptation to freeze in ecstatic surrender, trading will for the illusion of peace amid the horns. You draw the smuggled sword at last, the blade singing its faint high note as it clears the scabbard, the sound clashing with the beast's growl in a dissonant harmony that seems to unsettle the Minotaur, its head tilting in momentary confusion. Buying seconds as the tributes clamber onto the ledge, the thread pulling taut toward safety. The water rises with the beast's approach, lapping at your waist now. Cold tendrils snaking up your spine like the shade's chill warnings. Scents peaking in a nauseating blend. The beast's sweat-salt fury and the pool's mineral bite. Iron underbreath as you raise the sword, resolve forged in this moment of direct peril. The epic confrontation blurring hero and monster in the god's unyielding gaze. A first-person confessional rises through the roar, as if I, the chronicler of Norse berserker rages and Greek beast slayers, interject from the tumult in facing the horns of ancient curses, where deities pit mortal steel against divine spawn. I've wielded such blades in tales untold, knowing the clash echoes not just flesh, but the oaths that birthed the fray. The Minotaur charges, then water parting in a bow wave horns, lowered like scythes of judgment, the chamber quaking with its fury, the thread humming urgently as you sidestep blade flashing in a defensive arc that grazes its flank, drawing a bellow of pain and rage that sends waves crashing anew. The tributes shout from the ledge, their voices a fragile chorus against the din, but the beast wheels undeterred, the hunt evolving into battle, the flooded space turning treacherous with each lunge, splashes masking footing as you parry and weave, the sword song rising to counter the growl's trance. Breaking the spell, but at the cost of your arm numbing from the impacts, scars blooming in shallow cuts from horn tips that whistle past, ritual taboos from the cult legends surface in the frenzier strike. True. But spare the heart, lest the curse rebound. But the beast presses, relentless, the water reddening faintly with mingled blood, the devouring verdict hanging in every clash. You back toward the ledge, the thread coiling slack as the tributes extend hands. The Minotaur's eyes burning with the god's embedded wrath. The confrontation a sacred bargain's climax where steel meets curse, fate's thread the only anchor in the rising tide. The chamber floods higher, archers groaning under the strain, the beast's next charge propelling you onto the ledge just as its horns rake the stone where you stood, sparks flying like star omens in the dark. But the question that remains is in this flooded heart, where hunt turns to clash will your blade and the threads. Guidance fell the Minotaur's rage, or drown the hero's quest in the very waters of the curse's unyielding flow.
The ledge offers scant sanctuary. A narrow shelf of slick limestone that crumbles under the Minotaur's renewed assault, its hooves churning the flooded chamber into a maelstrom of foam and fury. Waves crashing against the base like the Aegean in storm-tossed rage. You pull the tributes deeper into the arched tunnel beyond, their hands slick with water and fear as they scramble on all fours. The threads glow trailing like a lifeline severed by the beast's proximity. Its hum now a frantic staccato that vibrates through the stone, urging retreat even as the roar swells to drown all else. The sword hangs heavy in your grip, its blade nicked from the graze, warm with your blood from the shallow horn wound that throbs like a second heartbeat. The iron temp's sharp on your tongue as you taste the sweat beating your brow. The Minotaur thrashes below, its massive form half submerged. Horns goring the ledge's edge in explosive bursts that send shards flying like shrapnel from a divine forge. Each impact a thunderclap that shakes the tunnel. Dust and water spraying in veils that blur vision and choke breaths, turning the confrontation into a visceral ballet where every parry risks the abyss. You wheel to face it as the beast rears from the pool, water sheeting off its bull-headed torso in rivulets that gleam like sacrificial. Oil its eyes, crimson slits amid the bovine, Fura locking on you with an intelligence that pierces the primal haze. It's a remnant of Persepo's mortal lineage twisted by Poseidon's curse, making the monster not mere beast, but oracle of oaths broken. The roar erupts anew, a bellow that warps the air into waves of pressure, its hymnal cadence fracturing into shards of sound. Vows end. Heroes bend the Dionysian quirk, amplifying into hallucinatory force visions flickering at your periphery. The court's whispers Ariadne's plea all dissolving into horns that multiply. In the spray, the taboo trance pulling at your limbs like invisible chains demanding surrender in ecstatic haze. You resist slashing the sword in a wide arc that whistles through the mist. The blade is song clashing with the roar in a dissonant crescendo that forces the Minotaur back a step. Its flank blooming dark with ichor, the scent blooming acrid and coppery mingling with the chambers. Mineral reek to create a nauseating brew that clings to your lungs, heightening the sensory onslaught as the water rises lapping at the ledge's lip like a tide claiming tribute. The tributes press against the tunnel's far wall. There form shadows in the thread's faltering light.
Ow.
Voices lost in the din, but gestures urgent pulling you back, away from the brink, but the beast lunges again. One horn shattering a chunk of stone that tumbles into the pool with a hollow splash, the impact sending vibrations up your legs that numb your stance. The psychological weight of the clash bearing down. This is no hunt's end, but the sacred bargain's apex, where Mino's hubris demands your blood price. The Minotaur's every strike a judgment from the gods' unyielding scales, echoing the shade's tales of costs eternal. Emotions churn resolve stealing against the rising dread, the hero's fire flaring in the wounds burn as you counter with a thrust, the sword piercing the beast's shoulder, eliciting a howl that cracks the air like lightning, the creature recoiling, but not yielding, its hoofs slamming the ledge to widen the breach. Water surging up in a geyser that soaks you to the bone, cold shock blurring motion into instinct. In the heart of Cretan mythology, such battles drew from bull-leaping rites in Minoan frescoes around 1600 BCE. Historical spectacles where youths vaulted, sacred animals in ritual communion with deities blending athletic daring with divine favor. But here inverted into mortal peril, the Minotaurs form a living emblem of the oath. Withheld its rage a quirky anomalous function. Wounds heal slowly under the curse, but each draw of blood summons spectral echoes of past tributes. Their shades flickering in the spray like ghosts rising from the sticks. The echoes manifest then, translucent figures of youths and maidens swirling in the mist. Their forms fragmented and pleading, amplifying the roar into a choral dirge that tugs at your focus. The taboo of the beast's blood demanding you ignore them lest they trade your concentration for their fleeting release. A bizarre rule where the ichor on your blade hums with trapped voices, turning the weapon into a cursed relic that whispers temptations. Drop the steel. Join the feast, mirroring the Dionysian trance. You shake it off, the sword's song rising in defiance, but the Minotaur presses the advantage, charging low to gore the ledge further. Forcing you to leap back into the tunnel, the tributes hauling you deeper as the shelf collapses in a roar of stone. And water, the beast's bellow triumphant, yet pained. Its form silhouetted against the flooding chaos, horns silhouetted like a crown of judgment. The tunnel narrows, the thread pulling taut ahead, its glow revealing a steep incline upward, a possible reversal of the descent. But the pursuit echoes behind the scrape of hooves on the new rubble, the splash of the beast wading through the breach. Undeterred, the hunt evolving into a siege where the labyrinth's veins converge on this climax. A first-person confessional cuts through the tumult, as if the bard of Greek epics, brutal clashes and Norse berserker frenzies, pose amid the spray. In wielding the blades against mythic spawn, where deities forge monsters from mortal flaws. I've tasted the ichor's sting in stories spun, knowing victory carves not just flesh, but the very oaths that chain the soul. The tributes flee upward, the incline slick and treacherous. Your wound pulsing with each step, the sword heavy but unyielding. While the roar chases like a shadow, the beast's labored breaths echoing its mounting fury, scents of blood and brine peaking as the tunnel twists. The threads hum a beacon amid the devouring verdict. Ritual taboos from the cult's lore surface in the frenzy spare, no mercy to the cursed. Yet honor the vow's root, but the clash's blood price mounts. Ichor dripping from your blade to mark the path, summoning more echoes that wail in the dark. Their presence is a psychological barrage that tests the fraying edges of resolve. The incline steepens into a crawl, the group squeezing through. The Minotaur's bulk too vast for pursuit here, its roars muffled to frustrated growls that vibrate the walls. Buying time as the thread leads to a wider passage. The flooding receding below, but the beast's presence lingering like a promise unfulfilled. You pause to bind your wound with a strip of robe, the tribute's hands steadying you, the sword's song fading to a whisper of the confrontations. Toll etching scars deeper than flesh, the trance's haze the echoes please the god's capricious gaze. The roar renews distantly, the hunt adapting, turning the maze's logic against itself in this suspended fury. Fates thread the fragile arbiter between slayer and slain. As the passage levels into unknown turns, the Minotaur's echoes fade but not vanish. The clash's verdict hanging in the blood-scented air, hero and curse intertwined in the labyrinth's unforgiving weave. But the question that remains is, having drawn first blood in the flooded heart's brutal fray, will the thread's pull lead you to the beast's final downfall? Or prolong the siege until the god's curse claims its ultimate toll? The passage levels out into a labyrinthine warren of interconnected vaults. The thread-esque glow, weaving erratic patterns across walls scarred by the Minotaur surlier, rampages gouges that weep thin trickles of mineral-rich water pooling in, depressions that reflect the silken light like shattered mirrors of fate. You press forward, the tributes fanning out slightly in the relative spaciousness, their sodden robes leaving damp trails on the stone, breath still ragged from the flooded clash, while the wound on your arm pulses with a dull fire. The makeshift binding seeping crimson that stains the thread's trailing end, turning segments of blue to a somber purple, as if the curse bleeds into the very lifeline Ariadne wove. The beast's roars echo sporadically now, muffled by layers of intervening stone. A guttural undercurrent that vibrates the air like distant thunder rolling through the Aegean. But the pursuit feels adaptive, less frantic and more calculated, the Minotaur circling through parallel veins. Its presence a psychological shadow that tugs at the edges of exhaustion, whispering of inevitable reunion in the maze's converging heart. Scents linger from the chamber below, brine and ichor. Sharp as a fresh forged blade, clinging to your skin like the god's unshakable decree, reminding you that drawn blood has only whetted the curse's appetite, escalating the sacred bargain to a toll paid in endurance and will. You navigate a junction where three arches converge. The thread tugging leftward, without hesitation, its hum a low, reassuring thrum that drowns the faint drips from the ceiling. But the tributes hesitate, eyes darting to the other paths where faint scrapes suggest the beast's flanking maneuvers, the labyrinth's logic shifting like a living organism to herd you toward confrontation. Emotions simmer in the group relief from the temporary reprieve, warring with the creeping dread of the siege. The maiden's hand lingering on your uninjured arm for steadiness, her whisper a fragment of prayer to Hermes for swift escape while you scan the walls for signs, the glow revealing etched taboos from Daedalus's hand. Blood calls to blood. Denote not the path with more, lest the veins align. The warning resonates with the shade's tales. A quirky, bizarre detail of the maze's design, an anomalous function where spilled ichor acts as a beacon, drawing the Minotaur through hidden conduits like a hound to the scent. A rule born of the builder's cunning to ensure no hero evades the god's judgment, turning every wound into a cursed relic that maps the predator's approach. You tear a fresh strip from your robe to reinforce the binding, the fabric rough against the raw. Flesh the sting, sharpening your focus as the distant roar peaks. briefly closer from the rightward arch, confirming the thread's wisdom in its pull. Deeper into the leftward vein, the vaults contract into a series of antechambers. Each one, a threshold laced with ritual motifs, faded murals of bull-leaping youths frozen mid-vault. Their forms stylized in Minoan grace around 1550 BCE, historical echoes of Nasus' grand spectacles where acrobats honored the sacred animal in divine communion. It's practices that blurred celebration and peril, much like this quest where the Minotaur's pursuit inverts the right into hunter's game. The air cools here, carrying the faint, balsamic whisper of cedar resin seeping from cracks. A sensory anchor to the surface world in Ariadne's vigil, but the beast's influence corrupts it. The resin scent twisting with the underlying musk of exertion, as if the labyrinth exhales, the Minotaur's labored breaths through its pores. You pause in one antechamber to catch your wind, the tributes slumping against pillars that hum faintly under touch, the swords wait a constant reminder in your sheath. Its song silent now but ready, the psychological tension building as the roars modulate growls, interspersed with snorts that echo like questions. The beast probing the stone for weakness, its Dionysian quirk manifesting in erratic patterns. The sounds inducing flickers of trance at the edges of hearing. Visions of revels amid horns that tempt pause. The taboo demanding you move lest the ecstasy claim your stride. The thread leads onward, unspooling into a grander hall where the ceiling vaults high, lost in shadow stalactites. Hanging like the teeth of some colossal jaw, dripping water that forms a central basin. Deliberate river crossing its surface still, an obsidian black, reflecting the thread's glow in distorted swirls that mimic the Minotaur's curling horns. You approach warily, the tributes fanning out along the basin's rim. But the roar erupts from a side arch, the beast bursting forth in a thunder of hooves. Ichor still oozing from its shoulder wound, eyes blazing with compounded rage, the hall contracting around the renewed clash as walls seem to close in sympathy. It charges across the basin, water erupting in geysers that soak the group anew. Horns lowered in a sweeping arc that forces you to dive aside, the sword drawn in a flash. Its song ringing out to clash with the bellow. The blade meeting horn in a spark shower that illuminates the hall like a star omen bursting. The Minotaur wheels the basin's water churning into a whirlpool under its hoof scents. Exploding blood and brine, the resin S twists now fully, the beast S feral recas you counter with a slash that K opens a gash along its flank, ichor spraying to sizzle on the stone, summoning spectral echoes once more. The past tributes shades rising from the basin like mist, their wails harmonizing with the roar in a disorienting chorus that tugs at your balance. You circle the basin's edge, the thread coiling slack but taut across the water. Its hum syncing with the sword S note to form a barrier of sound that holds the beast at bay momentarily. The tributes retreating to the hall's far end, their shouts lost in the din, but gestures urging the kill. The Minotaur lunges again, horns raking the air where your head was. The impact shattering a stalactite that plummets into the pool with a resonant boom. Laves surging to unbalance you, the trance S haze thickening as the roar S hymn intensifies. Feast in the vow S end. Visions of Athens, harbors flickering. Traded for the fight's focus, the taboos cost etching fatigue into your limbs, motions peak in the frenzy fury matching the beast's, resolve unyielding amid the pain as you faint left and thrust true. The sword plunging deep into the creature's chest, the blade twisting with a wet grind that draws a final shattering bellow. The Minotaur staggering back into the basin, ichor flooding the water blacker still. The shades swirling triumphant around its form as it collapses, horns dipping into the pool like a crown surrendered. The hall stills, the roars fading to gurgles, the beast's eyes dimming with the curses unraveling, the threads glow flaring bright as if claiming victory, the tributes emerging from hiding to witness the fall. Awe etching their faces in the aftermath's hush. A first-person confessional emerges softly amid the settling waves, as if I, the voice of Greek triumphs, bloody crescendos, and Norse sagas fells, confide through the echo, in slaying the spawn of divine whims and ancient mysteries where heroes carve oaths from monsters hide. I've sung such ends in shadowed halls, knowing the blade's kiss freeze, not just the beast, but the chains of God's caprice. You withdraw the sword, ichor dripping like liquid night, the basin's water calming to reflect the thread's unmarred blue. The Minotaur's form dissolving slowly into the depths, the curse's verdict rendered in blood and silence. Ritual taboos lift with the fall. No more blood to call, but the toll lingers. Your wounds, the traded visions, the psychological scars of the siege. As the hall's arches open to ascending paths, the thread pulling upward, toward light unseen, the labyrinth quiets, its hunger sated, the hero's quest tipping toward dawn. But the question that remains is, with the Minotaur felled in the basin's devouring heart, will the thread guide you in the tributes to the surface's embrace, or unveil one final twist in the god's unforgiving weave? The basin's waters settle into an unnatural stillness, the Minotaur's form dissolving like ink in a river's current, leaving only ripples that lap gently at the hall's edges, carrying away the last echoes of its roar as if the labyrinth itself exhales in relief, the stones sighing with a subtle shift that eases the vault's oppressive weight. You stand at the water's brim, sword lowered and dripping ichor that hisses faintly on the stone, the blades, song fading to a soft triumphant hum that resonates with the thread's renewed glow. Its blue light blooming brighter now, untainted by the curse's shadow illuminating the ascending arches that spiral upward like veins returning life to the heart above. The tributes gather close, their faces illuminated in the silken sheen eyes, wide with a mix of awe and lingering terror, the maiden's hand pressing to her chest as if to still a fluttering bird. The youth's broad shoulders slumping in exhausted release while the spectral shades from the ichor swirl one final time, their translucent forms nodding in silent benediction, before fading into the basin's depths, their bound tales fulfilled in this unraveling of the god's knot. The air lightens, the primal musk receding like a tide's ebb, placed by the faint upward drift of fresh earth and distant salt. Scents of the surface world seeping through the stone like promises whispered from Ariadne's vigil. Anchoring the victory's fragile dawn, you coil the thread carefully, its spool lighter now, the hum a steady cadence that syncs with your slowing pulse, the wound on your arm a throbbing reminder of the blood price paid. But the hero's fire endures, tempered into something quieter, wiser.
Nice.
As the group moves toward the nearest arch, footsteps splashing softly in the receding pools, the labyrinth's sonic textures softening from thunderous clash to the gentle drip of settling water, the rustle of robes drying in the warming air. Emotions swell in the ascent, gratitude binding the tributes to you like the thread itself, murmurs of thanks weaving through the hush. One youth reciting a proverb from the shades, when the vow breaks. The river flows free, a hymnal fragment that echoes the curse's dissolution, seeding motifs of renewal amid the epic's close. The path winds upward in gradual spirals, walls transitioning from gouged basalt to smoother limestone veined with quartz that catches the glow, like stars reclaiming the night. Historical echoes of Minoan quarries around 2000 BCE surfacing in your mind, where artisans hewn stone for the palace's splendor, their labor a mortal counter to the gods. Caprice, turning raw earth into halls of legend, much like this maze now yielding to the hero's stride. Higher still, the air circulates freer, carrying the subtle perfume of myrrh from palace braziers filtering down. A sensory bridge to the ordinary world left behind in the harbor's sun. The thread pulling unerringly as the spirals widen into broader corridors, arches framing glimpses of torchlight flickering from above. The labyrinth's devouring hunger sated and shrinking, its logic unraveling like a tapestry pulled at the edges. You pause at a junction where the thread nods loosely, a deliberate weave from Ariadne's hand. Perhaps releasing a soft chime like the shuttle's hum, an anomalous quirk of her craft. The silk vibrates with embedded memories. A bizarre function tied to Aphrodite's temperament as love's weaver, allowing the bearer to glimpse the giver's vigil in fleeting visions. But its taboo demands a whispered oath of return, lest the thread fray the heart's anchors, trading joy for longing's scar. The vision blooms then. Ariadne on the terrace, dawn's first light gilding her form as she paces, eyes fixed on the labyrinth's maw. Her fingers twisting the empty spool's remnants, loyalty's vigil unbroken, psychological tether that steels you against the ascent's fatigue. Her presence a sacred bargain fulfilled in this shared silence. The tributes sense the shift, their steps quickening as the corridor levels into the antechamber near the entrance. The massive bronze doors looming ahead, etched spirals now still and unmenacing. The air alive with the hum of the world beyond, distant voices from the palace court. The lowing of cattle in Minoan pens, scents of olive oil and baking bread wafting through cracks like invitations to life renewed. You secure the thread's end to the rivet once more, not dissolving in a puff of silken dust as the doors groan open under guard hands. Sunlight flooding the space in golden shafts that blind and warm, the tributes shielding their eyes against the glare, merging into the palace's undercroft, where servants gasp and scatter, words spreading like wildfire through Knossos halls. Emotions crest relief washing over the group like the basin's waves in reverse, tears mingling with laughter as they embrace. The maidens sob, a release of the depth's grip while you stand at the threshold. Sword sheathed and thread-pocketed, the victory's weight settling as Minos' decree crumbles. Athens' tribute ended in the Minotaur's fall. The ascent continues upward through service corridors, the palace unfolding in layers of frescoed beauty dancers and bulls leaping eternal. On the walls, motifs of the cult rites, now symbols of triumph rather than doom until you emerge into the crowded court. Sunlight full and unfiltered, the air buzzing with the court's hum, amplified by shocked courtiers whispering of the Athenian prince, who slew the beast Minos thrown empty in his chambers, the oath-keeper's shadow lifted. Ariadne awaits at the dais edge, her crimson gown vivid against the stone, eyes meeting yours across the throng with a silent plea resolved into joy, the shuttle in her hand humming faintly as she steps forward the crowd. Parting like mist before dawn. You approach, the tributes trailing in awe, and she extends her hand. Palm upturned to receive the thread's spool, the touch warm and grounding. Her whisper a proverb's echo. Threads bind the hero to the stars. No, they lead home. The reunion seals the quest's arc, her loyalty, the final anchor, a sacred bargain where costs scars. Traded memories yield to the gods' reluctant grace, Poseidon's curse unraveled in mortal will. A first-person confessional closes the circle softly, as if the storyteller of Greek legends, ascents, and Norse homecomings, draw breath at the light's edge and climbing from mythic abysses, where heroes reclaim the sun from deity's games. I've traced such threads to their source, feeling the vigil's warmth mend the blade's cold kiss. The court erupts in murmurs, turning to cheers, Minos appearing at last, his face etched with reluctant awe. The decree proclaimed void as Athens' yoke lifts, the tributes hailed as freed souls. You stand with Ariadne, the sword's weight a relic of the depths, the threads hum fading to silence in her grasp. The labyrinth's maw sealed behind, its ancient mysteries quieted, but echoing in legends weave. As the sun climbs higher, casting Knossos in golden promise, the ship awaits in the harbor, sails billowing for the return voyage, the epic's dawn breaking over the waves. But the question that remains is, with the curse felled and the thread returned to its weaver, will the gods' caprice yield a hero's unshadowed homecoming, or linger in the sails as one final whisper of the depths' unyielding call? The court's clamor swells into a symphony of voices and lyres plucked in hasty celebration. The sun's midday blaze pouring through alabaster colonnades to gild the flagstones in hues of triumph, turning the palace of Knossos into a living fresco where courtiers swirl like the dolphins on its walls. Their murmurs evolving from shock to acclaim as word of the Minotaur's fall spreads like incense on the breeze. You stand amid the throng, Ariadne's hand still warm in yours, the thread's spool transferred out, but its essence lingering in the subtle hum that echoes between you, a silken bond that defies the gods. Unraveling whims, her eyes reflecting the court's light with a mix of relief and shadowed resolve, as if the vigil's toll nights spent weaving fate as fragile lineages, lines of quiet strength across her features. The tributes cluster nearby, robes drying in the warmth, faces flushed with the ascent's afterglow. The maiden embracing a servant who rushes forward with fresh linens and bread, while the broad-shouldered youth raises a fist in silent vow to the freed. The group's unity forged in the Labyrinth's devouring heart, now blooming into shared rebirth under the Cretan sky. Minos approaches then, his purple robe trailing like a thunderhead's edge, his gaze sharp but tempered, the oath-keeper's decree dissolving in his nod of concession. Athens' blood no longer feeds the curse. Sail home, Theseus, with the gods' reluctant grace. The afternoon unfolds in ritual farewell, the palace buzzing with preparations and fairy. Of wine and olive oil loaded onto carts, garlands of myrtle and laurel draped over the tributes. Shoulders as symbols of purity reclaimed. Scents of blooming saffron and roasting lamb wafting from the kitchens like offerings to appease the deities' lingering caprice. You walk the palace grounds with Ariadne, the thread's absence, a hollow in your palm, but her presence fills it, her steps light. On the mosaic paths, depicting the very myths you've lived, bull leapers frozen in eternal vault. A historical nod to Minoan frescoes from 1600 BCE that captured the islands. Sacred games rituals where youths communed with the bull's divine fury, blending peril and piety in ways that mirrored your trial, turning art into omen as you trace a leaping figure with your finger, the stone warm under touch. She speaks softly of the shuttle's quirk, its ivory now etched with the thread's journey. An anomalous function infused by Athena's wisdom, it spins visions of the bearer's path in dreams, but its taboo demands the weaver's. Silence on the costs, a bizarre rule where the artifact's hum reveals star omens only to those who swear loyalties, oath-trading spoken truths for inner echoes that bind heart to heart her temperament, revealing the psychological tether that held through the depths. Emotions deepen in this interlude, gratitude for her gift mingling with the ache of impending parting. The sacred bargain of her aid exacting its subtle price, glimpses of your Athens in her eyes. Traded for the shadow of Crete's isolation, a river crossing not of stone but of souls, where the current pulls toward separate shores. The tributes prepared nearby, donning fresh chitons dyed in celebratory saffron. Their laughter a counterpoint to the court's formal toasts. One youth sharing a proverb from the shade's alcove, when stars shift. Grief yields to light, a hymnal line that invokes the eclipse's resolution. Celestial motifs aligning with the sun's ascent, seeding renewal in the epic's close. You touch the sword's hilt, sheathed now as relic, its song silent but resonant. The ichor cleansed in a basin of spring water by palace priests. Ritual ablutions that lift the curse's taint. The blade's edge gleaming as a boon returned to Athena's favor, no longer taboo but emblem of the hero's forge. As the sun dips toward the horizon, painting the palace in amber and rose, the procession descends to the harbor. Carts rumbling over sun-baked roads lined with olive groves that whisper in the breeze, the Aegean sparkling like 1,000 scattered jewels, its waves a gentle murmur promising voyage over the storm of trial. The ship awaits, black sails furled and hull adorned with laurel wreaths, the tributes boarding with cheers from the shore. Their families echoes in Attica, a distant pole that mirrors your own. Ariadne walks beside you to the water's edge, the shuttle clutched in her hand, her crimson gown catching the light. Like spilled wine in there in the hush before departure. She presses a final gift, a small vial of oil from sacred groves, scented with myrtle, and time its contents, shimmering with anomalous flecks that catch the dying sun. Anoint the sails, she murmurs. For the gods' winds favor the unbound. The vial's quirk surfaces in her tail, blessed by Aeolus. Wind god of the Odyssey's tempests, it calms, sees but demands a poured libation at dawn. A taboo rule where the oil's warmth trades calm for dreams of the left behind. A bizarre function turning voyage into vigil's extension, her loyalty etched in every drop. You board last, the deck creaking underfoot as oars dip into the foam, the ship slicing from Crete's embrace. The palace shrinking to a crown on the cliffs, Ariadne's form a solitary silhouette waving from the shore, her shuttle raised like a banner of threads, rewoven. The sea unfolds in starlit calm, the vial's oil poured at first light to summon favorable gales. The sails billowing with winds that carry scents of salt and distant pine, the tributes gathering at the rail to recount the labyrinth's trials. Their voices weaving the tale into legend's first draft, motifs of river crossings, the basin's flood, the Styx-like pools, recurring as proverbs of endurance. Nights pass in rhythmic swells, the sword propped nearby as talisman, its song humming faintly under moonlight. While visions from the shuttle's gift flicker in sleep, Ariadne pacing moonlit terraces. The threads echo binding you across the waves. Psychological tension easing into resolve's quiet glow, the god's caprice, yielding to mortal will's steady course. Dawn breaks over Athens' familiar silhouette, the Acropolis rising like a sentinel of marble and myth, the harbor alive with cries of welcome as the ship glides to dock families. Rushing forward in a tide of embraces, the tributes reunited amid tears and garlands their freedom, a ripple that swells to end the annual tribute's yoke. You step ashore, the earth solid under sandals worn from the maze. Aegeus awaiting at the temple steps, his face alight with paternal pride, the sword presented as proof of the curse's end, the court's heralds, proclaiming the victory to cheers that echo through the agora. Yet in the homecoming's joy, a subtle shadow lingers, the threads, traded memories blurring Ariadne's features slightly. The vials cost in dreams of her vigil, the gods whisper in the sail's final flap, a sacred bargain's echo where triumph carries the weight of what was left behind. A first-person confessional fades into the cheers, as if I, the chronicler of Greek homecomings, bittersweet harbors, and Norse voyages anchors, conclude from the tale's shore, in sailing from mythic trials to mortal shores, where heroes trade depths for dawn's light. I've charted such returns in whispers of wind, now knowing the gods. Games end not in silence, but in the heart's enduring weave. The Acropolis gleams under the sun, Athens alive with the legend's birth. The Labyrinth, a distant memory etched in stone and song, the epic's threads rewoven into eternity. As the celebrations unfold under star omens aligned anew, the hero's path circles back to the ordinary, the curse unraveled, but its lessons eternal. But the question that remains is, in this unshadowed homecoming, where God's caprice bows to mortal thread, will the depths call fade forever, or resurface in the quiet waves of a life forever changed? The Acropolis stands sentinel over the agora's revelry, its marble flanks, catching the sun's descent in a blaze of white and gold, as if Athena herself polishes the stones to honor the hero's return, the air alive. With the clamor of flutes and voices raised in paeans, garlands of laurel and ivy flung across the paths like verdant rivers crossing the city's heart, you move through the throng, the tribute's families enveloping them, in embraces that spill tears onto the flagstones, their joy a counterpoint to the labyrinth's silenced depths. While Aegeus clasps your shoulders at the temple steps, his eyes mirrors of your ungleaming with the pride of a king whose city's yoke lifts. The annual tribute's shadow banished by the sword's ichor-cleansed edge, now propped as relic in the sanctuary, its hilt wrapped in fresh olive branches, as offering to the wise goddess. The celebrations unfold in waves. Feasts of roasted kid and honeyed figs spread on low tables, wine am-free, cracked open to flow like the blood price redeemed. Scents of thyme and roasting meat mingling with the sea's salt on the breeze, turning Athens into a living hymn where motifs of renewal weave through the epics, close the gods. Caprice, yielding to mortal triumph's glow. Yet as dusk paints the sky in deepening indigo, a subtle unease stirs in your chest. The threads traded memories blurring not just Ariadne's face, but the voyage's details. The vial's dreams fading like mist at dawn, leaving only the echo of her vigil in the sail's final flap. A psychological residue that tugs at the edges of joy like the Styx's undercurrent. You board the royal barge for the harbor's oversight, Aegeus beside you, his voice recounting proverbs of endurance. Oaths live in the cut, but healing mends the blade, a callback to the shades. Whispers his hand on your arm, a paternal anchor amid the cheers. The ship that bore you to Crete lies moored, black sails still furled from the haste of departure. The crew bustling to ready her for a ceremonial sail around the bay, laurel wreaths adorning the prow like talismans against lingering curses. In the myth's ancient weave, such oversights stem from the god's capricious temperament, a quirky, bizarre detail tied to Poseidon's grudge. The black sails, symbols of mourning for the tribute's presumed doom, carry an anomalous function, and divine lore failure to change them invokes the sea god's wrath, a taboo rule where the fabrics die infused with Cretan earth binds grief to the wind, trading victory's signal for tragedies, tied a rule where the sails texture feels heavier under touch, whispering doubts that erode the hero's recall. The oversight creeps in unnoticed at first, the revelry's haze clouding judgment, the feast's wine loosening tongues but fogging minds. The threads cost manifesting as a fleeting blankness, Ariadne's final plea dissolving into the basin's echoes, leaving the black sails untouched in the crew's rush. You stand at the rail as the oars dip the ship gliding from harbor into the bay's embrace. The Acropolis receding like a dream's edge, Aegeus watching from the shore, with arms raised in salute, his form silhouetted against the temple fires. The sails unfurl under favorable gales, the vials' oils boon lingering in their swell, but the black fabric catches the torchlight like wings of night, a signal of doom unchanged, the sea's surface rippling with subtle unease as if the depths sense the error. Emotions shift in the hold, the tribute's laughter faltering as the wind carries the sail's whisper. A sonic texture like distant roars muffled by waves, the psychological tension coiling anew, not on from the Minotaur's fall, but from this unraveling thread of fate. The sacred bargain's final price, triumph's joy traded for a father's despair. The god's caprice, ensuring no victory escapes unscathed. Word reaches the shore in frantic cries as the ship rounds the promontory. The black sails stark against the moonlit sea, Aegeus' gaze fixed from the cliffs, his face draining of color as the signal screams loss. The king, assuming his son's failure in the labyrinth, the curse's grip unbroken. He stumbles to the rock's edge, robes whipping in the wind. A proverb torn from his lips when stars shift. Grief claims the light, the eclipse's omen, inverted in this tragic twist. His leap into the waves a blood price paid in paternal sorrow, the sea swallowing him like the Styx's ford gone awry, currents carrying the Oathkeeper's echo to depths where Poseidon claims his due. The ship docks amid chaos, your arrival a thunderclap of revelation too late, the tribute's cheers turning to wails as the truth dawns. Athens' joy fracturing into mourning, the hero's return shadowed by the sail's unforgiving black. The threads caught etched in the city's grief, Ariadne's vigil a distant anchor now laced with the god's wry justice. You stand at the harbor's rim, the sword's weight absent, but its scars eternal. The vial shattered in haste, its oil spilled like tears on the stone. The epic's close a bittersweet weave where victory's dawn yields to twilight's toll. The labyrinth's mysteries not confined to Crete but rippling across the sea in consequences unforeseen. A first-person confessional lingers in the salt wind as if the teller of Greek tragedy's harbor falls and Norse king's fateful leaps. Confide from the wave's edge, in charting the returns where heroes forget the signal of sun, where deities twist triumph into tide's embrace. I've mourned such oversights in tales of salt and stone, knowing the gods' games end in silence broken by the sea's eternal sigh. The Acropolis looms in starlight, Athens veiling its lamps in respect. The legend born not just of slaying, but of the costs that bind hero to fate. The threads echo a whisper in the night, fragile against the gods' unyielding caprice. As the waves lap the shore in rhythmic dirge, the curse unraveled but its shadows cast long. The hero's path circles into legend's quiet forge. But the question that remains is in this shadowed homecoming where sails betray and seas claim their due will the depths. Lessons forge an unyielding legacy, or dissolve like Aegeus' vow in the unforgiving current of the god's final capricious turn. The harbor's lanterns flicker like hesitant stars against the night's velvet shroud, casting elongated shadows that dance across the waves where Aegeus vanished. The sea's surface now a mirror of fractured moonlight, rippling with the subtle currents that claimed him in their unyielding pull. You stand frozen at the water's edge, the tribute's wails rising in a chorus that mingles with the gulls' cries. Their grief a tangible weight pressing on your chest, the black sails of the ship billowing softly in the aftermaths, hush mocking the victory. One in Crete's depths, with this final capricious twist of fate. Servants rush from the agora, torches flaring to illuminate the chaos, their voices overlapping in frantic queries. The king, the sails, while the crew disembarks, faces ashen with the realization of the oversight. The threads traded memories now a cruel irony, blurring not just Ariadne's vigil, but the simple act of changing the fabric. The god's temperament ensuring the sacred bargain-esque cost extends beyond the labyrinth-esque stone to the very shores of home. Emotions crash over you, like the incoming tide regrets, bitter sting mingling with the hero's hollow. Triumph the sword's scars on your arm throbbing anew as if echoing Aegeus' fall, the psychological residue of the maze, manifesting in this unraveling where slaying the beast frees. Athens' youth but binds the city's heart in mourning's chain. The night deepens into vigil, the Acropolis fires dim to embers of respect. Priests gathering at the temple to pour libations of unmixed wine into the earth, invoking Poseidon to release the king's shade from the depths. Their chants a rhythmic undercurrent that blends with the waves' lap, scents of salt and incense rising like offerings to appease the sea god's grudge. You lead the tributes to the sanctuary, their steps faltering on the path lit by sputtering brands, the maiden clutching a laurel sprig, as talisman her whispers of the basins, flood now laced with the sea's devouring parallel, while the youth grips your shoulder his. Resolve a mirror to your own fraying edges. In the myth's ancient weave, such tragic oversights echo local Athenian legends from the 5th century. ACE historical tales recorded by Plutarch, where Theseus' forgetfulness birthed the Aegeus cult rituals. Of black sails and white signals evolving into annual commemorations, blending the epic's grandeur with the mundane error of mortal haste. Turning the hero's return into a cautionary hymn, where deity's caprice punishes not failure, but the hubris of unchallenged success. The thread's absence aches here, silken hum replaced by the vial's shattered remnants in your pouch. The oil's spilled drops glistening on the stone like unshed tears. A quirky, bizarre detail of the gift's anomaly. The myrtle-scented liquid tied to Aphrodite's lingering grace evaporates under moonlight to summon faint visions of the lost. But its taboo demands no pursuit or rule, where the flecks shimmer like star omens, trading closure for eternal longing the gods, rule ensuring the vigil's echo persists across the waves. Dawn breaks pale and subdued, the sky awash of gray over the harbor where divers search the currents for Aegeus form there. Splashes a somber percussion that punctuates the city's muted grief, garlands wilting on the docks as the tributes. Families gather in silent clusters, their joy from the night before curdling into shared lament. You ascend to the palace alone, the agora's paths empty, save for mourners trailing white veils. The air heavy with the scent of smoldering myrtle from funeral pyres kindled in haste. The psychological tension of the homecoming resolving into a profound quiet. Where the Labyrinth's trials feel distant, yet indelible, the Minotaur's fall a Pyrrhic boon that reshapes Athens' fate. Aegeus' body surfaces at midday, borne ashore on a litter of olive boughs, his robes sodden and face serene, as if claimed by a gentler ford. The priests anointing him with oils that echo the oracle's vial. Rituals drawing from ancient practices where kings' deaths birthed hero cults. Historical foundations for the Aegeus shrine on the cliffs. Motifs of river crossings, Styx or surrecurring in proverbs, chanted at the bier. Threads bind the hero to the stars, sever them, and fall to the tide. The funeral procession winds through the city, flutes dirging low, the tributes walking foremost as freed witnesses, their presence a living testament to the victory's cost. Emotions cresting in collective catharsis, your own grief channeled into resolve as you light the pyre's first flame. The smoke spiraling upward like the thread's uncoiling path, carrying the king's shade to the god's reluctant judgment. In the pyre's glow, visions from the vial's remnants flicker unbidden Ariadne on Crete's shores. Her shuttle spinning new lines under the same stars, her loyalty a distant anchor that steadies the unraveling. The sacred bargain's full price revealed, not just Aegeus' leap, but the hero's throne now yours, Athens' crown heavy with the weight of unintended legacy. The city gathers at the flame's edge, voices rising in hymns that weave the tale into eternity, the sword presented anew as emblem of the curse's end, its blade reflecting the fire like a star omen. Resolved, the black sails burned in ritual, alongside the king their ashes. Ash scattered to the wind as taboo lifted. The god's caprice sated in this dual offering. You speak then, voice carrying over the crackle of wood and sea's murmur, recounting the labyrinth's depths without the oversight's shadow. The epic's motifs oaths, cut, rivers forded, threads binding forging the legend that will echo through ages. The tribute's survival a ripple that ends the tribute's yoke forever. Athens rising renewed from the ashes, its democracy's seeds sown in the soil of this bittersweet dawn. A first-person confessional fades with the smoke, as if the pilgrim narrator of Greek epics, pyre-lit closes and Norse kings' fiery sends, reflect from the ember's edge. Enkindling the flames where heroes mourn the costs of divine games, where sails blacken the sun's return. I've woven such ends in tales of tide and torch, knowing the gods. Whims yield not to steel alone, but to the heart's unyielding vigil amid the unraveling weave. The pyre consumes the night, dawn's light reclaiming the harbor. Athens' lamps relit, in quiet honor, the legend born complete, the Minotaur slain. Aegeus deified, the threads echo a whisper in the wind that carries Crete's memory across the sea. You turn from the flames, the city awakening to your rule. The depths lessons etched in every stone, the epic circle drawn in victory's tempered light, the gods' caprice, lingering as a subtle current beneath the surface calm. As the sun climbs over the Acropolis, casting long shadows that merge sea and shore, the hero's legacy takes root in the ordinary world's fertile ground. But the question that remains is, in this legacy forged from curses' fall and sail's tragic black, will the gods' final whisper guide Athens to enduring dawn, or resurface in the waves as an eternal reminder of fate's capricious, unbreakable thread? The Acropolis gleams under the midday sun, its marble veils now draped in fresh laurels that sway in the breeze like whispers from the gods. Own groves, the city's rhythm resuming in measured steps, merchants haggling in the agora, children chasing doves through olive-shaded lanes. The sea's eternal murmur a backdrop to Athens' rebirth, tempered by the pyre's ashes scattered on the waves. You ascend the sacred rock as king, the crown's weight settling on your brow during the rites at Athena's temple, priests anointing you with oils scented of time and victory's myrtle, their chants invoking the goddess's favor for the rule born from the labyrinths. Unraveling the sword enshrined beside her olive tree as eternal sentinel, its blade catching the light in flashes that mimic the thread's lost glow. The tributes, now citizens freed from tribute's shadow, dispersed into the city's weave, some 2 farms reclaimed, others to the assembly as budding halls, their stories seeding the oral traditions that will birth the epic verses. Motifs of river crossings and sacred bargains recited around hearth fires, turning personal scars into communal lore, where the Minotaur's fall symbolizes not just Crete's curse lifted, but Athens' democratic dawn, a historical pivot echoed in the reforms that follow, drawing from Solon's later codes around 594 BCE, where heroes' legacies forged laws from legend's forge. Yet in the palace's quiet chambers, as evening drapes the horizon in saffron veils, the gods' final whisper surfaces in solitude, the vial's shattered remnants reforged in memory as you gaze seaward from the balcony, the harbor's lights twinkling like the star omens that guided the voyage both ways. Ariadne's vigil haunts the edges of thought. Her shuttles hum a faint echo in dreams where Crete's cliffs rise unbidden. The threads traded costs blurring her features into a silhouette of longing, psychological tether that binds triumph to unspoken yearning. The sacred bargain's ultimate price, a hero's throne atop the ordinary world, yet hollow without the weaver's touch. Emissaries arrive at dawn with scrolls from Minos, sealed in wax imprinted with the labyrinth's spiral, proclaiming alliance over enmity. Crete's ports open to Athenian trade, the island's Minoan wealth frescoed palaces and bull cult rites from 1700 BC, and now partners in a peace woven from the beast's ichor. But laced with the gods' capricious undercurrent, Poseidon's tempests held at bay only by annual libations poured into the bay. Rituals that honor Aegeus' shade as sea guardian, his leap deified in shrines along the shore. The legacy takes shape in the year's gentle turn, Athens flourishing under your rule agora, expanded with halls for debate. Fleets built to rival the seas that once demanded tribute, the tribute's children growing to tell the tale unadorned by the sails. Black shadow, their proverbs evolving. Threads bind the hero to the stars, but winds carry the unspoken vow. You commission a temple to Aegeus on the cliffs, its columns carved with motifs of black sails transforming to white under sculptor's chisel. A historical nod to the Aegeus cult that endured, blending myth with piety to appease the deity's temperament. The quirky, bizarre detail of the shrine's anomaly, an inner chamber where winds whisper fragments of the labyrinth's hymns. An anomalous function tied to Ela's gift, allowing visitors to hear the roar's echoes softened to guidance. But its taboo demands offerings of thread-silken offerings uncoiled at the bee. Altar trading auditory boons for the listener's memory of loss, a rule where the stone's texture hums like the shuttle. drawing pilgrims to confront the costs in the god's wry design. Emotions settle into a profound equilibrium, regrets, tide ebbing to wisdom's shore. The hero's fire channeled into stewardship, the psychological tension of the depths resolved in the city's steady pulse, where the Minotaur's curse becomes a cautionary weave, teaching that divine caprice yields not to blade alone, but to the fragile lines of loyalty and recall. Ariadne's shadow fades into legend's grace. Her vigil mythologized as the fate weaver's aid, inspiring priestesses in Crete's groves to spin threads of alliance. The sea between UA forward crossed in trade winds rather than dread sails. The Acropolis watches over it all, Athena's owl, hooting at twilight, a sonic texture that blends with the wave's lap. Scents of olive and salt carrying the epic's close into eternity, the god's whisper reduced to a gentle zephyr that stirs the laurels without storm. A first-person confessional drifts on the evening breeze, as if the eternal teller of Greek legacies, enduring shores and Norse kings' tempered thrones, conclude from the balcony sedge, in forging the paths where heroes rule, the light reclaimed from abyssal night, where sails errors birth cults from the tide's claim. I've etched such epilogues in stone and sea's song, knowing the gods' games circle not to end, but to echo in the ordinary world's unyielding dawn. The sun sets over the harbor, painting waves in gold, Athens' lamps kindling one by one, the labyrinth a distant echo in the heart's quiet chambers. The thread's legacy, woven into the fabric of rule and right, the curses unraveling complete in time's patient loom. As the stars align anew above the Acropolis, free of eclipse's shadow, the hero's circle draws to its eternal rest, the depths call silenced in the city's thriving hum. But the question that remains is, in this legacy's enduring light where God's caprice bows to mortal weave, will the whispers of Crete and sail ever resurface to test the throne, or fade into the harmonious tide of a fate forever rewoven? The balcony overlooks the agora's twilight bustle, where lanterns sway like fireflies in the gathering dusk casting. Pools of amber light on merchants folding their stalls and philosophers lingering in debate their voices. A harmonious undercurrent to the Acropolis' silent vigil, the marble now veined with the dais fading gold as if Athena etches the hero's legacy into eternity's stone. You lean against the balustrade, the crown's subtle pressure, a reminder of the throne-s duel, edge forged in the labyrinth-s devouring heart. Tempered by Aegeus' tide-claimed fall while the sea whispers below, its waves lapping the harbor in rhythmic cadence that echoes the thread's lost hum, carrying scents of salt and distant pine from Crete's shores, a sensory bridge that stirs the god's final whisper into faint life. Athens thrives in this poised equilibrium, its democracy's seeds sprouting in assembly halls where tribute's sons now vote as equals. The curses unraveling birthing laws that bind not in blood but in shared voice. Historical echoes of the city's evolution toward Periclean ideals in the 5th century BCE, where myths like yours fueled the polity's fire, turning epic trials into civic creed, the Minotaurs. Horns recast as emblems of tyranny felled by collective will. Yet the whispers of Crete resurface not in storm or sail, but in the quiet arrivals of envoys bearing gifts, silvery shuttles etched with spirals, vials of myrtle oil shimmering under Athenian sun. Ariadne's vigil, manifesting in alliances that weave trade routes like threads across the sea. Her brother's curse dissolved into pacts of mutual harbors. You receive them in the throne room. Frescoed walls depicting the voyage's motifs forded. Oaths cut now adorned with Cretan tapestries of bull leapers and graceful arc. A fusion of islands' lores where Minoan rites from 2000 BCE blend with Attic piety, the quirky bizarre detail of one shuttleless anomaly revealing itself in private, its ivory hums under touch. An anomalous function tied to the Moire's temperament as fate weavers, spinning visions of paths untaken. Ariadne's terrace under starlight, her hand extended not in farewell but invitation, but its taboo demands. The older silence on the site a rule where the artifact's warmth trades revelation for restraint. The god's caprice, ensuring loyalty's echo, persists without the pull of pursuit, a psychological tether that steadies the rule without unraveling the throne. Emotions distill in these encounters, longings, tide ebbing to wisdom's calm harbor. The hero's fire now a steady flame in the city's hearth, the sail's black shadow lifted in annual rites, where white banners fly from the cliffs. Honoring Aegeus as guardian of the deep, his shrine drawing pilgrims who uncoil threads into the wind. The sonic textures of their chants, blending with the waves, murmured to form a dirge of renewal. The tribute's descendants visit the palace, their tales polished into verse by bards who recite the epic under olive boughs. Proverbs from the shade's alcove enduring. When stars shift, grief yields to light. Weave true, and the abyss yields. Hymnal fragments that seed the myth's immortality. Motifs of sacred bargains recurring in festivals where youths vault over painted horns in mock trials. Historical games echoing Gnosis bull leaps, turning peril into play that teaches the costs without the blood price. The sea remains harmonious, its currents carrying not curses but cargoes of alliance. Poseidon's grudge sated in libations poured at dawn, the vial's legacy in every calm gale that fills Athenian sails. The gods whisper fading to a zephyr that stirs the laurels without capsize. In the throne's solitude, as night cloaks the agora in star-pricked dark, the depths call surfaces one final time, not as roar or tide, but as reflection in a polished bronze mirror, your form scarred yet unbowed, the threads echo a subtle warmth in the chest. Ariadne's silhouette clear now in memories weave, her vigil, the anchor that held through unraveling. The legacy endures, untested by resurgence. The throne secure in the ordinary world's fertile rhythm debates in the assembly. Ships docking with Cretan wine, the Acropolis watching over a city where heroes' deeds forge not chains, but freedom's pass to the winds. The gods' caprice bows fully, their games circled into harmony's tide. The labyrinth, the sealed chamber in legend's vault. Its mysteries echoed but not revived, the fate rewoven in the harmonious flow of time's patient current. A first-person confessional settles with the stars, as if the timeless bard of Greek thrones, steadfast dawns in Norse halls enduring peace. Draw the tale's final breath from the balcony's hush. In concluding the weaves where heroes rule the light eternal, where whispers of abyss fade to the sea's gentle song, I've spun such finales in the loom of lore, knowing the gods' caprice resolves not in storm, but in the quiet harmony of mortal threads forever bound. The moon rises over the harbor, silvering the waves. Athens lamps, a constellation of lives reclaimed. The epic circle complete in the night's serene embrace, the depths silenced, the legacy a light that guides without shadow. As the stars wheel above the untroubled sea, hero's path merges with the city's eternal stride. The gods' final turn a benevolent fade. And in this harmonious tide where Crete's whispers blend with Athens' song, the fate stands rewoven and broken, unending. The throne room's columns rise like ancient sentinels under the moon's silver gaze. Their shadows pooling on the mosaic floor where patterns of labyrinthine spirals now bloom with olive branches inlaid by master artisans. A fusion of Crete's curse and Athens' renewal etched into the stone as if Daedalus himself lent his hand to the city's heart. You sit upon the throne at midnight's hush. The crown, a circlet of laurel-forged gold that rests lightly now, its weight lifted by the year's gentle erosion, the air carrying the faint, nocturnal scent of night-blooming jasmine from the palace gardens, mingling with the ever-present salt that drifts inland like a lover's sigh from the sea. Athens sleeps in harmonious repose, its streets a web of quiet lanterns and distant murmurs, the agora transformed by day into a forum of voices that echo the tributes. Freed strides their descendants debating laws born from the epic's forgetics. Against tyranny's yoke alliances sealed with Cretan ink. The Minotaur's fall a foundational myth that underpins the polity's unyielding light. The gods' final whisper has faded entirely. No resurgence in tempests or sails, but a benevolent undercurrent that stirs the city's sails toward prosperity. Poseidon's caprice tamed into trade winds that fill holds with Minoan pottery and Attic grain. The sacred bargains, costs redeemed in this enduring weave. Emissaries from Crete arrive under dawn's first blush, their ships gliding into harbor with hulls painted in spirals of blue and white, bearing not just tribute but kinship scrolls, unrolling tales of Ariadne's court, her shuttle now a relic in Gnosis, a shrine spinning threads for queens who honor the hero's name in festivals of vault and vow. You greet them in the assembly of the crowd, a living tapestry of citizens whose faces reflect the tributes. Lineage there cheers a thunder without the labyrinth's roar motifs of river crossings recurring in the speeches. Ford the sea as we forded the depths. Oaths bind not in blood but in shared horizon. The shuttle's gift arrives in a cedar box, its ivory humming faintly as you lift it, the anomalous quirk awakening in the open aeromalous function blooming. Visions of Ariadne's later years. Her vigil evolved into a legacy of weavers who bridge islands, but the taboo holds you silent. The warmth trading site for the restraint that preserves the throne's poise, her silhouette clear in the mind's eye. It's a psychological anchor that resolves the longing into legend's grace. The god's temperament yielding to the harmony of fates rewoven without fracture. The legacy unfolds in the city's daily tide. Festivals marking the anniversary of the return with white sails hoisted from the cliffs. Youths reciting proverbs from the shade's alcove under star omens, aligned in perpetual peace. The sonic textures of lyres and waves blending into hymns that echo the thread's hum. Scents of myrtle libations poured at Aegeus' shrine carrying the sea god's reluctant blessing. The sword, enshrined in Athena's temple, draws pilgrims who touch its hilt for strength. Its song a faint whisper in the wind that inspires not conquest but counsel. The quirky bizarre detail of its anomaly persisting. Under full moon, the blade gleams with ichor flecks that form maps of alliances. A rule tied to the goddess's wisdom, demanding oaths of equity from the viewer, trading guidance for vows that bind the city's freedoms. The god's caprice transformed into a benevolent forge where caprice serves the weave rather than unravels it. Emotions crest in these rites gratitudes, steady flow washing away regrets' last eddies. The heroes fire a communal hearth that warms without consuming. The sail's black shadow a teaching tale recited to children. Turning tragedy into the polity's resilient core. In the palace's evening quiet, as you walk the gardens where jasmine twines with olive, the depths call remains silenced. No test to the throne, but the ordinary world's gentle challenges droughts, met with Cretan irrigation. Debates quelled by the epic's lessons. The Acropolis standing as eternal witness to a rule where mortal threads outlast divine storms. Ariadne's echo lingers in the trade winds, her vigil mythologized in ballads sung by harbor bards. The shuttle's visions a private solace that steadies the hand on the scepter. The sacred bargains full circle drawn in harmony's unbreaking line. The sea laps the shore in contented rhythm, its currents carrying not whispers of resurgence, but songs of enduring alliance, the god's final turn a fade into the harmonious tide that lifts all sails toward shared dawn. A first-person confessional whispers with the jasmine's bloom, as if I, the ancient voice bridging Greek eternity's peaceful harbors and Norse saga's steadfast ends, seal the narrative from the garden-esque hush. In drawing the final motifs where heroes' legacies bloom in the ordinary light, where abyssal roars yield to the sea's serene song, I've concluded such tales in the loom of lasting peace. Knowing the god's caprice dissolves not in defiance but in the unbreakable harmony of threads eternally rewoven, the moon bathes the Acropolis in silver, Athens lamps, a constellation of lives unbound. The epics weave complete and broken, unending, a light that endures beyond the star's wheel. And so, in this harmonious tide where Crete's whispers and Athens' song entwine forever, the fate stands rewoven, unyielding. The garden's jasmine yields to the night's deeper hush petals, unfurling under moonlight like secrets shared with the stars their fragrance. A subtle veil that softens the balcony's edge where you stand the Acropolis, a luminous crown against the velvet sky, its temples whispering. Ancient pieties to the winds that carry no trace of storm. Athens breathes in synchronized peace, harbor's lanterns bobbing like grounded constellations. Ships from Crete docking under favorable gales that bear cargoes of woven tapestries and spiced oils. The sea's harmonious tide a conduit for legacies entwined rather than severed. The god's caprice dissolved into the ether of forgotten grudges. Poseidon content with libations that turn his domain from devourer to provider. The throness duties weave through the days like Ariadne's thread once did councils convened in the assembly where voices rise. It's not in tribute, Estred, but in equity as forged the tributes. Bloodline now senators who invoke the Minotaurs fall as parable against despotism. Historical precedents from your rule echoing in the democratic foundations laid much like Cleisthenes' reforms in 508 BCE that democratized the polis myths, serving as mortar for the structure of shared governance, turning the epic scars into the city's unassailable walls. In the palace's inner sanctum, as dawn gilds the frescoes with renewal's light, the shuttle's visions recur in quiet moments, the ivory relic humming on its pedestal. Its anomalous quirk, a gentle bloom. Under the first rays, it spins ethereal threads that map not perils, but possibilities, alliances flourishing across the Aegean. Ariadne's descendants as queens who send envoys bearing shuttles of their own, the taboo of silence, observed in your nod the warmth. Trading the site for the preservation of harmony, her vigil evolved into a dynasty of weavers whose looms bind islands in perpetual pact. The psychological tether now a bridge rather than a chain, the god's temperament softened to benevolence's whisper. Emotions flow like the Ilyssos. Gentle stream serenity's current washing away the last eddies of doubt, the heroes fire a legacy lamp that illuminates without scorching the sail's black shadow, a relic in the Aegeus shrine where pilgrims uncoil threads into the bay during solstice. Writes the sonic textures of their chants harmonizing with the waves to summon Aegeus' shade as protector. Scents of myrtle and sea spray rising like incense to affirm the bargain's redemption, the curses unraveling complete in this cycle of offering and return. The city's festivals swell with the epic's motifs, annual processions to the cliffs where white sails are launched in mock voyage. Youths reciting proverbs from the oracles.com, oaths live in the cut, but harmony mends the weave. Hymnal lines that echo the shades-bound tales turning the labyrinth into a symbolic maze of hedges in the agora navigated. By children in games that teach cunning without cost, historical echoes of Thesian rites and Athenian calendars blending play with. Piety to honor the hero's path. Cretan traders join the revels, their lyres strumming melodies of bull leaps, softened to dances of alliance. The quirky, bizarre detail of a shared relic surfacing in the exchanges, a joint artifact. The sword's ichor blade reforged with Minoan bronze. Its anomaly now, a dual function, gleaming under dual moon's lunar eclipse, or no. Two reveal maps of trade, tied to Hephaestus' forged temperament. Demanding vows of fidelity from bearers, the rule where the metals hum trade's guidance for unbreakable pacts. The god's caprice recast as the glue of enduring harmony. No resurgence to test the throne, but affirmations that fortify it. Solitude in the throne's alcove brings the depths final. Silenced call, not as echo, but as integration. The Minotaur's roar a metaphor in council debates, the threads hum internalized as the pulse of just rule. Ariadne's silhouette, a guiding star in the polity's navigation. Her vigil, the unspoken ethos that tempers power with compassion. The sea remains a faithful ally. Its currents ferrying not whispers of Crete's resurgence, but embassies of kinship. The god's final turn, a perpetual fade into the harmonious tide that elevates the ordinary world to mythic grace. Athens light a beacon, drawing sailors from shadowed shores, the legacy unyielding in its weave of freedom and alliance. The Acropolis endures as witness, Athena's gaze benevolent. The epic circle not closed but expansive. Threads radiating outward in the city's thriving web, the fate rewoven in eternity's lumen broken. Unending, a symphony of mortal will over divine whim. A first-person confessional lingers in the dawn's hush, as if I, the perennial narrator of Greek eternities, boundless horizons and Norse epics' harmonious fades, seal the saga from the sanctum-s light, in extending the motifs where heroes' thrones become beacons of woven peace. Where abyssal depths merge with the sea's unending song, I've prolonged such narratives in the eternal loom, affirming that the god's caprice yields wholly to the resilient harmony of threads that bind across all tides. The sun ascends over the untroubled bay, silvering to gold the sails of alliance. Athens agora, awakening to the day's democratic hum. It's a labyrinth of mythos fully integrated, its lessons the light that guides without end. And thus, in this eternal tide where Crete's echoes and Athens' anthem entwine without cease, the fate remains rewoven and timeless, triumphant,